All right, welcome everybody to night 2 of March Madness, our budget round for this season. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm going to ask Mrs. LeClaire to lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome. We're dropping like flies after last night's 5-hour marathon meeting. Mr. Mottola and Mr. Brown are going to be absent tonight due to business travel that they could not rearrange. It happens in a month like this when we have so many nights. So both of them, I'm sure, will watch this on Fair TV at the appropriate time, and I know we'll have questions to follow up on. Excuse me. Tonight we go through the finance and the culture and recreation areas of the budget. We have one holdover item from last night. Last night we talked about all the elements that make up the internal service fund, but we actually did not look at the mathematics behind that fund. So if there's no objection, I would say we start off tonight walking through the roll forward of that fund, see where we stand based on the discussions we had last night. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns from everybody or anybody before I get this started? Seeing none, we'll move along. Let's go, Mr. Mayor. I'll turn it over to you to walk through the internal service fund. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get to that, there's two handouts on the tables in front of you. One is the schedule of unemployment compensation that was prepared for the preparation of the budget. So you have that. And the second one is a 4-page document with respect to the internal service fund. So I'll jump right into that. I'm going to go through this in a little bit of detail tonight for the people that are not familiar with this schedule. So some of us, for some people, this will be redundant and a little bit boring, but I think it's a good idea. So what I have here is, what you have in front of you is 4 pages. The first page is the Internal Service Fund, July 14 to 15. Second page is actual 16. Third page is projected 17 with December 16 experience. And the fourth page is projected 18. So I want to use this to kind of explain the process and also as a follow-up to last night's discussion about the risk management portion of this budget. So the first sheet, Internal Service Fund, July 14 through June 30, 15. Looking at the top line, fund balance, 7/114 accrual basis. You see that the risk management has a deficit balance of $6 million. See that the town, Active Medical at that time, had a positive balance, $3,800,000. The Board of Ed had a positive balance of $761,000 for a total for the Internal Service Fund of a negative fund balance, $1,422,000. Now, to put that in perspective, if you were to go back to July 1 of 14, the risk management fund balance was a negative $8,277,000. So that improved by $2 million, $2.2 million over that 2-year period. And the total was a negative $4,997,000. So that puts that number, and if you go back even further, the balances were more negative. So what we do then is we budget a revenue, we budget an expenditure, and then the net revenue and expenditure comes down to the net profit or loss, and that net profit or loss goes into gets carried forward, improving or degrading the fund balance. So looking at the risk management, we start out with negative $6 million on July 1/14. We had revenues from the town department premiums and i.e. budget and potential recoveries totaling $3,250,000, and the expenditures for that year were $4,070,000, so we had a deterioration of $820,000. So the fund balance there went from a negative $6 million to a negative $6,800,000. Now this relates a little bit to what we were talking about yesterday. So if we have a budgeted number, and if the expenditure exceeds that budgeted number, then that's what leads to the degradation, to a degradation in the fund balance. If the actual experience is better than the number, then you'd have an improvement in the fund balance, which is a situation you have, which you go over to the next column. The town active medical started out at $3,807,000, had a budget of revenue budget of $10 million, which is town department premiums, employee premiums, COBRA premiums. Then we have the expenditures, which is the claims and administrative costs, and then you have it had a profit of $577,000. So it improved improved by $577,000 to an improved number of $4,414,000. And then the Board of Ed had a negative that year of $622,000. You see that in the net profit loss line. So the combination of those three items then going over to the total line improved the total from a negative $1,004,000 to a negative $865,000. And then, so you go, then those numbers, if you look at the projected fund balance, it's the third line from the bottom of the page, the $6,008,000, the $4,004,000, the $138,000, those become the lead numbers on the following page for the following year. See, those are, you turn the page, you have the fund balance 7,115, you see the $6,008,000, the $4,004,000, the $138,000, and the net negative, $2,287,000 for the total. And then you look at this year, again, there was a risk management negative of $759,000. There was a positive on the town medical, a positive on the Board of Ed medical, so a total positive of $2,273,000. So at the end of 16, we went from the negative $2,287,000 to a negative $14,266, which is the last year that we closed, as you all know. And again, repeating, that $14,000 negative is an improvement of 5-6 years ago when it was like $7,000, and which I did indicate earlier in 1914 was $5 million negative. So then you flip the page to the projected 17 using December 16 experience. You can see again we've carried forward the ending fund balance from the prior page to the beginning fund balance, the current page. And so you see the 760, the 6 million town active, the 1,000,003 Board of Ed, and the 14,000 negative total. You have the revenues, you have the expenditures. On the Board of Ed side, now remember they went to state 2.0, so they no longer qualify as a proprietary fund. So this is the last year you'll see the Board of Ed in this schedule. The revenues, you see there's no department revenue premiums for the internal service fund because those are now in the regular general fund budget. However, the Board of Ed did have, and we kind of knew this was coming, received RX rebates of $723,000 more than what was included in their initial estimate. And they also had expenses about of $390,000 more, and then they had some miscellaneous catch-up items and administrative fees of $194,000. So all that together improved their fund balance from to $1,466,000. So if we were to end right there, the total balance of the internal service fund would be a positive $62,126. Now, if you go down to the two numbers on the bottom of the page, that $1,466,000 on the Board of Ed side, that fund balance, now since that fund goes away, where is that money going? That money has been allocated based upon the actions of the town bodies last year when setting the budget, that has been allocated to, has been allocated to fund $740,000 to fund this year's premiums of the Board of Ed, which helped reduce the Board of Ed budget last year, and $726,000 allocated to this year's general fund, which is the makeup item that we see in our quarterly reports, how we're making up the $3.2 million revenue shortfall from the state revenue changes. So what this looks like then going forward, now remember, so assuming we do that, so that 1.466 basically will end up going away, all right? So if you look on this second last page, if you look at the on the risk management side, the negative $7,615,000, the positive $6,210,000, that totals a negative $1,004,000, which those numbers are on the top of the following page, which is the projected for 2018. And then you see the budgeted revenues, the budgeted expenditures, and everything is budgeted at balance. So it comes down to the same numbers. You see the third line from the bottom, the estimated fund balance at the end, $7,615,000, the same as the beginning. For risk management, the fund balance for town medical, 6,210, the same as the 6,210. So this is kind of the process. Now, back to the legal discussion which we had last night, how we do it. I mean, there's a lot of variables in there. And you haven't given that some thought, and then, I don't know who suggested last night, it's like, why not just do a 3-year average and then have discussions about if there's any big cases, anomalies. So I think going forward, that's what we're going to do, just take a 3-year average and then have a discussion with KERMA and town attorney to see if there's any big cases or other cases that would impact that we should go higher or lower. And that's for future budgeting processes. And so that's one takeaway from this, putting this together today. So the second takeaway is the total has gone from a negative $7 million to a negative $1.4 million effective July 1, 17.
As well as with the Board of Education move, we've eliminated a large,
risk.
the largest risk pool,
Right,
because that's over $20 million.
correct.
So now we're really in the $14 million range per year versus being in the $45 million range in
Yeah.
prior years. Is that fair?
Correct statement. And then also the risk management, even though it still has a negative 7 million, I don't want to keep those hundreds, I think it's because of the town funding last night that was discussed, is now it's a negative 7.6 million. That has improved over the last 3 years by $600,000.
Do you have questions on these? Now, the rating agencies haven't made any comments on our internal service fund in recent years. Is that a fair statement?
No negative. They've seen the positive progress.
So they made positive comments in your calls and discussions.
Yeah.
But at one point, they were talking about this being a negative, and that's kind of gone away in the last couple of years.
Correct.
Well, their comments on that changed, and in fact, they took away the negative outlook at that
Right.
point. This was one of their areas of concern because it had been consistently growing, and when we stopped that, turned it around and showed improvement, and were able to explain why we had the improvement, they were impressed enough to take away the negative outlook on that.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the internal service fund right now? Thank you for the update. Let's move on at this point into tonight's agenda, and thank you for adding the page numbers to this. We're going to start with Department number 3030. That would be the Purchasing Department. We're on page 188. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Turn that over to Mr. Foley. I don't know if this body has met Gerald. Gerald Foley was an excellent hire. We stole him from the town of Norwalk. And he's really added a great deal of expertise to the department. He's been very involved, with a lot of work in both the phone system RFP, the 401A service administrative RFP, and is here to present his budget.
And I just wanted, I did get a notification, are our microphones working for the home audience? Because someone's saying they can't hear us.
You were a little soft. He's plenty loud.
Okay. Obnoxious even. There you go. Thanks. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Gerald Foley. I'm the Director of Purchasing for the town. I was hired last April, and this is my first go-around with the budget, so I apologize if I don't have all the information you need, but I'll do my best. I oversee the purchasing department. I have two buyers that report to me. As Bob alluded, I was previously working for the town of, the city of Norwalk. So I was the purchasing agent there for 15 years before coming to work for Fairfield. Since I've came aboard town of Fairfield, I've gone through and tried to augment some of the processes that we've done. As Bob alluded to, I've helped with the voice over IP RFP we have out now. We've also had a pension consulting services RFP, which we're in the midst of reviewing. Anyway, so I presented a budget. I went through the budget for the last 3 years, and I presented to you what I think is a favorable budget. I went through and tried to, where I could, reduce some of the costs.
So to be clear, the budget's going up by 2.79%,
Right, the
or
majority,
about $7,000. The majority of that would be related to payroll.
correct.
And then there's what other changes are there of note? Social Security and everything else is down.
Correct.
Okay, and the union contract years are noted in there, so we see that it's the 17 and 16 years. Do we have questions on this budget? I know one question that's going to come up, and that is, if we were to make a cut here, where would you recommend that it would be the easiest place for you to swallow a reduction in expense if we had to do one?
Probably the conference, the education, and then the travel expenses.
Okay.
Well, what those were placeholders, so that if, say, a buyer or myself wanted to attend a conference, we would have funding for it. So there was two lines. One was for the educational conferences, and the second one was for the travel portions. So if need be, those would probably be the two areas.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do we have other questions on the purchasing department budget? Mr. Becker?
Thank you. So, and welcome. In regards to the advertising, the $3,000 that's in there,
Yes.
can you just give a little bit of an explanation for that, and also where you're advertising and what elements of that are, required and whatnot? I think we had came up last night to change some things, but I'm mostly looking for newspaper type advertising.
Yeah, well, we
Stop doing.
we have a weekly ad that we run in it's the Fairfield, I think it's the Minuteman paper. We run that weekly. It's in the back section. So we run that, it's, I guess, once a week that appears. And then the probably largest portion of that budget is for when we do large projects for the construction projects. Those we were mandated by state statute to advertise, and those we have to advertise in a paper with a larger distribution. So what we've been doing is typically advertising in the Connecticut Post. Secondary source would be the Stanford Advocate, and then a third source would be the Hartford Current. Depending on the requirement of the state item, we might have to advertise in two papers, and we may have to advertise for more than one time. So they may say two papers, and you have to advertise it for 2 consecutive days. But for the most part, the majority of the advertising is just done in the local paper.
And the weekly Minuteman ad that you're doing, that's not a state requirement that you're
No,
doing, but
it's-
that's
Yeah, it's something we've done. It's, in the past, practice has been it's a relatively small ad. It's an insignificant cost, but we do that to augment, letting people know that that's where all of our postings are going to be. It's on the, and what it does is it basically refers the people to the town's website.
Okay.
But it's done on a weekly basis. And I think it's like $19 a week or something like that. It's like I said, relatively small amount.
Got it. So, in regards to these state statute type ones?
Yes.
Can you see about pulling as a follow-up point, a total of how much over the last year has been spent on that? That's
Yeah,
state statute driven?
Yep.
To all these papers?
Yep.
You
Yeah,
can
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's
No, no, yeah, not tonight, but
yeah.
just
Yeah,
when
it'd
you
be easy
can,
enough to
between now
find
and the
it.
end, you know, the
Yeah, it
cycle.
depends. Well, we just did an ad for Public Works for one of the grants that they had, and it was they required
Yeah.
extremely big ad. I know that ad was, if we paid $19 for the weekly ad, the other ad was probably like $500 or $600, and I believe we had to run that ad twice. So, but I can get a breakdown. I can
Yeah.
distribute it.
If you could, that'd
Should
be
I
helpful.
give it to
Yeah,
Mr.
they
Mayor?
front
or-
load
we'll
as
go
the
through Mr.
work up to
Mayor.
us.
Mr.
Yep.
Mayor?
Everything goes through them. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Timniak?
All right, thanks for coming and welcome to Fairfield. It's an uncomfortable question, but have you looked at all to combine services for purchasing through the Board of Education?
Well, my office does all the buying.
You do all the buying for BOE, so
Yes.
BOE has no buyers whatsoever? None?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right, great.
Yep.
So that answer would be yes.
Take it.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to administrative services, which I think is also you, correct?
That's correct.
And I have a note here. Linda, tell me where I'm wrong. Is the revenue associated with this or associated with the finance underneath? That's what I thought. Yeah, no problem. But thank you for noting that as well. Let's just go to administrative services, which is on page 90. And this budget's actually going down by about 0.75%. It's a fairly small budget at $100,000. Any questions, comments, concerns on this budget? Can you just tell us, the largest expense here, over half of it, is fees and professional services. Can you remind us what that is?
That's the mail services. The town outsources the mail operation. We have a company that provides it. What we've further done too is we have this particular line is just for to hiring that. It's a company, but it's basically one person that works within town hall. But what we also did at one time is we had a mail meter, where we actually metered our mail. So we actually have another company, it's called Corporate Mailing, where we send our mail to and they meter it for us. So we've eliminated the expense to have a meter. But that one line is just for that one service.
So it's the outsourced mail service, which
Correct.
is delivered by one person who is not an employee.
Correct.
And when they take vacation, get sick or anything, they provide a replacement
That's
for that
correct.
personnel.
That's correct.
Any other questions, comments on the administrative services budget? Flat from prior year. All right.
What's the rental? The
Rental?
and storage?
I remember that came up in a
I
prior
know.
year, too.
I can't remember what it was again.
I think that's the copiers. Let's see.
Rental and, rental because we rent the copiers?
Yes, yeah, I'm looking, let me see here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
For common copiers. in-
Right. yeah, it's a copier expenses. What we have is, there's multiple copiers that we have, so they're all funded through this particular one account.
Why is it going up? Why did it go up? Did we lease more copiers in the last couple of years, or what did we do there? Do we know?
3.5% increase.
Per the contract?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Are those just the copiers at Town Hall? Those don't cover Board of Education, right? They do their
No,
own?
there's, I believe there's, and I should know this over time, but I think there's at least 3 in this budget. There's two in Town Hall, and then there's one in the old Town Hall, or 1 or 2 in that building. So it's either 3 or 4 copiers.
But they don't include the ones that are in the town clerk's office, they do their own because they get funds for
Correct.
those?
That's
Okay.
correct, right.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
Good evening. Quick question about the current budget basis, the current executing budget and the new budget. You're overspent on postage by like $13,000.
Yeah.
So is that the right number in the budget?
No, what happens is the postage is all expensed out of this one account.
Uh-huh.
And then what happens is, that on a monthly basis, we charge it back to the departments.
Oh, got it, okay.
It's
So
allocated
It's basically like, it's an allocation, so it's all charged to this one line, but then we allocate
it goes back out.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Anybody else? Seeing none? Thank you, sir,
Thank you.
and welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's go to finance. We're going to start with revenue, because Mr. Mayor wants to generate revenue here. Page 44 in our budget books. Mr. Mayor, can you lead us down this, please?
All right, you can see the revenue items are mostly just under finance, they're on page 44, and they go through page 45, and plus the first item on page 46. You can see that none are department estimate. They're all either source documents or three-year average, the vast majority being source documents, the three-year average being like film permits and return check fees and you know, miscellaneous. So I'll just go through the, down the source document line, the phone access line, that's personal property tax paid to the state, transferred to the towns based upon the properties within the town borders. Then you go to the next several school boarding grants, the low SIP, town aid road funds, the municipal revenue sharing, the Pequot Fund. Those are all state grants, which we've discussed. The 39,000 number you see there, the second number from the bottom in this column, that's from the Housing Authority. That's their contracted payment to us in lieu of taxes for their properties. And then the next one, the 143,000, is in lieu of taxes, is again state. And then going to the next page, you have in lieu of taxes again, state-owned, you have the pilot programs. Then you have the parking, the parking authority. That's based upon the parking authority contract. Then you get down to the interest, dividend, and income. You have three numbers there. 1,032,000, contra numbers of 374,000, 87,000. The 1,032,000 was calculated based upon current holdings and their interest rates, and items that mature between now and the end of next year were assumed to be reinvested at the same rate they are currently making. So that might be a little bit of cushion the way interest rates are moving. The change in market valuation number, $374,000, is based upon a 100 basis point move next year, which is the Bloomberg consensus, and the 87,000 is bank fees that we mark against that account.
That seems really high. The bank fees are going up quite dramatically year over year.
Some of them are related to the activity at on the tax collector, you know, the collections at the banks. You know,
So
people
these aren't
pay their.
just bank fees related to the investment account. These are bank fees related to all your cash accounts.
Yeah.
Because I thought originally this was supposed to be just against the investment accounts, but you're throwing all the bank
Yeah.
fees in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you talking about fees when people go to, say, People's Bank and make their tax
That
payment?
would be one, yes.
How much is that costing us?
I don't have the detail. I can.
Did you get that number for us?
Yeah, we can. write that out.
And if you could find out the number of transactions versus the total cost for
Yeah.
that service?
Right.
Just
And
seems like a
I'll
lot of
hope that
money.
I'm right.
So you've gone fairly aggressive on your interest income this next year compared to what we got, what the budget was this year. Where do we stand this year versus budget, do you think? I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. I think we projected a $215,000 negative compared to budget in the total.
Okay, so in the 2000, that makes it even worse. In 2017, the budget was 861. You think we're coming in closer to 600,000?
No, if you remember, it's not the interest, it's the mark-to-market. We had some big hits after the election. If you remember right after the election alone, the 10-year went up, I think, 86 basis points, like in a week or
Right.
something. And I think we've recaptured some of that, but I think but right now, we're looking, well, of course, we're getting closer to the end of the year. The closer to the end of the year you get, interest rate adjustments don't impact you as much, because we've worked hard to shorten the duration of the portfolio to have a, lesser of an impact.
How comfortable are you with this investment income number for next year? I mean, I know there's a lot of pressure to get upward numbers in revenue here, so
Well, no, it's a detailed schedule.
can you pass it out? Or did you pass it out? Did we get it tonight?
No, but I can certainly do that.
Do you have multiple copies, or can we do that?
No, if we have access to a copier, we could make copies, but,
That's fine. Can you, I'd rather us not kind
Yeah.
of,
yeah, we have it by account, by balance.
are you feeling reasonably optimistic about this, or are you feeling that it's a stretch budget, or what?
No, I feel it's, the only thing that could, I mean, I feel confident in the income. The thing I don't feel confident in is the mark-to-market.
Which the mark-to-market you're relatively aggressive there in that you only have it going down 374 next year.
Right,
We're at 600 this year, roughly.
right.
But then again, the 3-year average is only like 170.
Yeah, it's, this is going to be, the market's changed. This is a new market for bond investments. If you look at like your year-to-date stock market right now, it's different than the past. I think it's up like, through yesterday, is up maybe 7% on your global, maybe 7.02% on the NASDAQ, 6.5 on the Dow, the S&P. Whereas bonds this year, if you look at your 10-year bond year-to-date, it's like, 0.02, that type of thing through yesterday. Some of what we, when we had our quarterly review, which had the 215 in it, if you looked at it, that was updated from December 31, because if you used the actual rates on December 31, it would have been a greater mark-to-market, a greater impact, and I think there's been some more recovery as well. But the bond market is,
Can you take a look at this? Given all the pressures we're under this year, can you take another look at this over the next few weeks and
Yeah.
come back to us towards the end of the budget cycle?
yeah, and I'll pass this out.
Yeah, please do. And do we have any other questions on investment income?
Has there been any sale of any town properties this year, the current year?
I think we sold some little slip of something.
I think Fairfield Beach Road, if you remember that discussion,
We sold Fairfield Beach Road.
the entire road.
It's a toll road now.
We decided to send it out to a private contractor. There was a property towards the end of Fairfield Beach Road, a very small property.
Yep.
I don't know if it comes through this board. There was some discussion at both the Board of Selectmen level, then at the RTM level.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't see it.
Okay.
I think it's 25 grand or something in that basis. Do you remember?
Okay.
The rental income from Fairfield Theater Company's gone up 31% this year. Is that because of the warehouse? Is that because something else?
The warehouse.
The warehouse? Okay. So just additional ticket sales because of extra venue.
Bingo.
And
More nights, more
What's
fees.
the other venue that's potentially opening up over there? I thought I read something in the paper that there was some other venue that was on, actually, you entered from Uncor Road but was part of that property.
Oh, I'm not sure what you read, but what it may have been is that the Fairfield Theater Company has applied for a state grant
Okay.
to renovate some of the office space rooms upstairs to create more space downstairs, to allow the downstairs first floor to be more part of the production space,
Okay.
and move some of their offices upstairs,
Okay.
and finish that off, and also make it a nicer venue from Uncor Road, because it's pretty nasty
Yeah.
right now.
Tired.
Yeah, if that's a better word. You must be in real estate.
Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, last year we got the audit report from FTC. Can we get that again?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bateson.
Thank you.
I have a question here. We kind of skipped over it. I just want to make sure I understand it. You go up to the second line on page 45, the pilot program. So we were getting $2 million. The three-year average was 3.4 million about. Last year's budget was 2 million. Now we're down to 1.5. This is a reduction from the state related to that program, even though we should have more property that's eligible for the pilot program. Is that right?
Given when this came out, this is the governor's estimate.
Yeah.
It came out in second week in February.
Right.
We don't believe that comprehended the transfer of the GE property to Sacred Heart, which happened on December 15th. We just don't think that worked its way through the channels by then. So this is probably as a status quo before that. We may get some additional money. The way
Right.
this program works, as it's been explained to me, is there is one number for the state.
Right.
Then you divide that by all the properties. So any new not-for-profits, say when Sacred Heart bought Great River, that basically took money away from everybody else in a constant environment. If they decrease that number, as well as you add properties, so when the Sacred Heart property is recognized on this, it will not bring in an additional $500,000 in pilot money.
Right.
So it will be a net negative to us. We're not sure when that will hit.
But we might have a little bit of upside here to that point.
Correct. Oh, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And it might reduce the 1.5 that we were getting because now we're adding more acreage to the total net. So the cost, the grant per acreage will go down based on anybody else who had bought property that wasn't
Right.
included.
But we add to our acreage.
We add to our acreage. So it should be an increase over the 1.5.
Yes.
Is it going to be 200,000, 300,000?
It depends on what happens with everybody else.
There's a lot of moving pieces, and we don't see them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, I want to make sure I followed that conversation. The state there's one bucket of money.
Pool of money.
Okay, so,
It's almost like.
So we're
an
lo-
Evaluation like you do for your tax apportion.
Mike, do you know if the state decreased that pool? Is that why our share went down, or did something get reallocated throughout the state and we lost out?
Both those would provide downward pressure on it. I'm going to suggest that both happened, and I'm not sure which was the major driver.
Okay.
I will follow up with the state and see if we can get that answer.
The source document we refer to, is this a representation we've gotten from the state that this is what you can expect this year?
Correct.
What are you hearing from CCM? Are we at risk for this too? Is this number, the governor's budget, is this,
I don't.
you know what I
because-
mean? The other numbers we're losing, is this one on the table too?
Well, we've already lost some in this year. I'm not hearing anything where this should be challenged more than that. That is obviously all subject to change, but I haven't heard anybody talk about reducing pilot more. Every city, CCM, everybody else out there, all of our, on the panels that I've worked on, committees for CCM, our recommendations are all that this is funded more. That's been a constant theme. And certainly in we lost 500,000. If you look at what happens to the cities that depend a lot on pilot, the big cities, they take big hits on this.
Any other questions? Let's continue to go down the revenue side on this. And I have a question for Mr. Mayor, so go ahead. Somebody have a question? Any other questions?
One piece of information that, on the pilot statewide, The budget, the state budget's been cut from 123 million to 115 million.
Okay. So that is one of the drivers?
And they're doing a lot of building in Yale, at Yale. I don't know what's right, in New Haven, for Yale.
Okay, any other questions?
Take some of the money.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions on the finance revenue?
I think I got one, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Bateson, and then. I'll
Sorry,
go to Mr. Becker.
parking authority, is that under this discussion?
Yes.
Did I, why is it going down? Is there some sort of,
That's the contract, right? And we had that,
That was a 10-year contract or 15-year contract or something, there's an agreement.
so that's a written agreement, that's a set number, it's not, it's
Correct
not
statement.
based upon number of permits, income
Correct.
from the parking authority, nothing like that?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
the income from the parking authority goes to the parking authority. There are two primary ways we get revenue from the parking authority. One is they lease a certain amount of town land. That's literally in their lease, so those numbers are, in essence, fixed. It is a declining amount, but it was fixed a few years back. And then the other place is they do pay for services, and you'll see a income from parking authority here, annual reimbursement, and I think that's up 5%, and that goes up 5% a year based on our agreement with the parking authority.
Okay, good, thank you.
And that agreement ends, I think, June of 18, or December of 18. December of 18. Agreement's over, so it's up for renegotiation at the moment.
Who negotiates that, the first selectman and the parking authority?
Well, first selectman, town council,
No.
I don't know who does it.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
I
The
don't
first
do it.
selectman, it's okay, Bob.
So-
You don't have to know them all. The first
come on.
selectman renegotiates that
Yeah.
with the parking authority, and our agreement with state DOT is up at the same time. So the parking authority agreement is, in essence, we're renegotiating with DOT, which should be a very interesting negotiation as we go through that.
Okay, good, thank you.
thank you. Mr. Becker?
So, two things now. So on the parking authority, does that then go to the RTM for approval? Does the Board of Selectmen? Where do those agreements go at this point?
It's been a while since we've done those. We haven't done anything along those lines since I've been first selectman, so I'll have to check on that, Mr. Becker.
Okay. Yeah, if we could just get that, that'd be helpful. Thank you. And then, just on the pilot, you rattled off the two numbers where they were statewide and where they are now. Can you just, what were those two?
123 million, 115 million.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Other questions on the revenue lines? We have one on, if you go to the next page,
Well, then, okay.
there's one item labeled transfer.
Well, that transfer is the,
It's $1.1 million.
right, that's the bond premium utilization.
Okay, so that's the bond premium utilization. We're labeling it as transfer in. Can you explain that a little bit, just so everybody is aware of what's going on there?
Yeah, basically, our bonds sell for very low interest rates. They're, below, they've been below 2. But investors prefer to buy bonds with higher coupons, okay? So the investor doesn't want a 1.5 coupon bond. The investor wants a 3.0 or 3.5 or 4 coupon bond. So the result of that, the investor pays more. That comes into our coffers as a bond premium amount. We get bond premium both for the bands and for our bonding. The band money, we use, the bands are only for 1 year. That's the band is a bond anticipation note. They're 1-year notes. Any band premium we get, we use that band premium to pay that band off. So that stays in our coffers for 1 year. Actually, 1 year less 1 day. And the bond premium, because of IRS rules and arbitrage rules and that type of thing, to be very, very careful, that what we do is we allocate that over a 3-year period, and that's amortized over a 3-year period equally. So if we get a bond premium of $1.2 million, we'd use 400,000 of it a year for 3 years. And this is per the schedule.
Bonds or bands?
It represents, do I have that schedule? It represents both, but
And Mr. Mayor, where was it accounted for in prior years, given that it's showing up separately here? And what do we say to somebody who says, are you using a one-time gimmick here due to the tough budget year?
It was used to be in the, and I can't tell you exactly why we moved it, but it was a contra number in the debt service fund, is what it was.
So we reduced our debt service number by
Correct.
the value of the bond premium. That's
Right.
kind of what I recall.
Yeah.
And what do you say to somebody who says Fairfield's, using a one-time revenue gimmick here to manage a tough budget year versus,
No, this is what, you have to use your bond premium, and that's how you use it. That's how we've always used it, at least since I've been doing this.
so this is not a change in policy?
This is not a change in
Not-
policy
It's
at
also
all.
spread over 3 years. If we're using a one-time gimmick, we would have loaded it all into this year.
I heard it. That's why I want to know for the $1 million, how much of that is the bands and how much of that is the bonds? Because the bonds get spread over 3 years, correct?
Yeah, and the
Okay,
bands, by definition, are all
all right.
used within 1 year, so
Right.
that's not technically, that is a one-year gimmick, but we don't have any choice.
And what I want to know is how much of the $1 million is
Yep.
a one-time event and how much of that is going to carry over to the next couple of years. So thank you.
The bond premium that's being used this year is $515,000 plus $172,000.
So the vast majority of this is the 3-year amortization schedule.
Right.
And we'll have that in the next couple of years after this as well, correct?
Correct.
And then the remainder of that,
If we get no bond premium on the sale this year,
yep,
because we're doing bands and bonds this year, right? Right. So if we were to get no bond premium this year, the following year's use of this line item would be $655,000. And then the year after that, $655,000, and then it's all gone.
right, because it's related to that specific tranche of bonds.
Correct.
We have questions on this? Mr. Walsh?
Just one more time, before, we didn't have it listed here, but we had it against, we netted it against debt service?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
this
would I
shows it
expect-
broad.
Am I going to expect to see the debt service number then going up, since we're not using any type of premium against it?
Well, the debt service, well, it's same thing. I mean, the net's the same.
I know it nets, but,
But-
I mean, but I just want to know when I'm looking at that.
Yeah, I mean, when we showed in the past, we showed both numbers. We showed,
Sure. Yep.
we showed the gross and the net.
Okay.
And I think the bond, the debt service is up $1 million, I think?
It is.
$1.2 million, I think, maybe?
It's up. I don't remember the exact number, but it's up.
Yeah. That's one of the things we're trying to do. I'm working on, in fact, I have a meeting with the consultants next week. As you all know, because of the way we do our bands and pay back our bands and do our bonding, historically, we've had this, very volatile debt service track. It can go up 3 million, down 2 million, and it's very complicated. And to like Tony Wang was talking the other day about the balloon in and out. Because you got the band payments, you got the 5 years, the 15 years, the 20 years, you got the bond payments, you got all this stuff. We're trying to put a schedule together that will allow us to bond properly, appropriately, based upon the life cycle of the assets, that will make this less volatile and more reasonable for the town. It's a lot of work. We haven't moved on it as quickly as I'd hoped to, but we're trying to get it done.
Yeah, we talked about that last year, too.
Yeah.
I do recall that.
We've
More
made
was-
progress, but, but not as much as I'd hoped to over the year.
Mr. Walsh?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're selling these bonds through the auction, we're not saying we want this much bond premium. They tell us we try to net out the best cost for the town and what the lowest total interest rate is, correct?
That's totally, absolutely correct.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to
totally
get that out
correct.
there to make sure
Yeah.
no one thinks that we're trying to raise income in a weird way by pushing debt up.
Yeah,
It's a
well-
total, you make an investor from a company makes a play on this, and whatever's the best interest rate, we choose that interest rate.
Right.
I would argue and Jim, I think you've seen it
Yeah,
take
and
place. So the issue is, what we're looking at is the net amount.
Yep.
So it's not, we're not playing one against the other, it's literally,
Yep.
we look at the net amount.
Net amount.
So if somebody came up with a super low interest rate, that would win.
Exactly.
If somebody comes up with this, we net it out against the interest rate, so you don't overly weight the coupon fee, you don't overly weight the interest rate. It's the net amount you look at, that's what's picked. And it's also done kind of automatically. It's really kind of a, we sit here and watch the screen, watch the transaction take place, but it's the computer calculates the lowest net amount, and that's the winner, and that's all decided, and we get to watch it go on. It's pretty exciting,
Yeah.
but we're not actively involved in picking one or the other until the computer does.
Yeah, it kind of goes like this, to be a little more elaborate, and Mike is right about everything he said, is there's two types of bond sales, there's open option and closed option. We use an auction, we use an open auction process, okay? So everybody knows at a certain point in time, the town of Fairfield is going to be selling bonds, what the dollar value, the dollar amount, excuse me, of the bonds. Okay, then people are on their computers, your J.P. Morgans, your Chases, your Jannies, whoever, they're on their computers and they make a bid. And everybody in the world sees that bid. And so other people come in and they play with it, and they don't know, and then at the end of the day, and you have to respond within X number of seconds or minutes or something, depends on how many minutes you're into it, and it shows it continues tracking which one is the best one. It goes to the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, I don't remember, and that's the one that we take.
And like you were saying, some people want larger coupons, so they're paying larger bond premiums up
Right.
front in order to get the larger coupons.
Right.
Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to follow up on Mr. Walsh's point. From what I heard, it sounds like this has no budgetary impact because it seems to me all it is a reclassification.
Well, it does have a budgetary impact,
Yeah,
but
but
it's... but
even if
other
I didn't
accounting-
include this here, it would have been wound up in debt service, netting out debt
It's
service.
it's still a budget impact. In other words, let's say our bond payments are 25 million. So instead of paying 25 million, we'll pay 25 million minus
Okay,
1 million.
I get what you're saying.
200,000.
The presentation here, though, it just seems
Come
different.
to the same...
Where
Correct.
you put it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right?
Your point is
Thank you.
correct.
That's
Right.
what I was getting at.
What matters is the fact that you're taking it, because it's done in coupon versus interest rate, you're taking it in 3 years versus over the lifetime of the bond.
We have done this practice before. I remember we
Have
did this
done this
4 or 5 years ago
This
for something.
Actually, this is something that happens pretty much every single year.
Right.
It's just a function of did you do bonds or bands, and how big the number is.
But
Yeah.
Mr. Bateson's also right that a couple of years ago was another large number that caught everybody's attention, as I recall. It's the first
Did-
time we kind of talked.
Did you guys generate a policy at that time, or no? You just reviewed it and said the 3 years or whatever that you're...
The bond council told us what the
Bond
IRS
counsel
I think-
rules
told
were.
us what the
There-
rules
I think
there
there's some
when I-
IRS policies that come into play.
That's what guided it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we did have a very similar conversation back in the time, saying, are we playing games here and picking this to lower the impact for 3 years?
Right, and that's why we're not having that conversation tonight, because we had it 3 or 4 years ago.
Correct. Right. But I think it's important the public understands that. We're not doing something we haven't done in the past. This isn't a one-time adjustment. We are following IRS regulations and guidelines. This is past historical practice.
Yeah, I think there's another important aspect of this, given conversations about this type of transaction that have occurred elsewhere, not with us, is that if you'll notice, we're not budgeting this number based on a bond sale or band sale coming up in the next year.
Right.
This is totally reactionary. There are some organizations that project what this number will be and budget it over 1 year, 2 years in the future. We don't do anything like that. We basically, when it comes, it comes. It's a net against the insurance.
These are bonds we already have. This isn't based on a future sale and an anticipated coupon rate. in
Correct.
the
We're not,
future
we're not doing any projections, anticipations. That would be aggressive.
sale. Right.
And
money's
that,
in the
we're
bank.
not doing that.
That is aggressive, but is it allowed? Or is it discouraged by our auditors and
Let's
other
see.
people?
It is done, so I'm going to suggest it is allowed. I'm not sure it's a proper fiscal management from that standpoint, and I think that's one of the reasons we've stayed away from it. Certainly under Mr. Mayor's guidance, we have not done anything like that since he became CFO.
Okay. Any other questions on finance-related revenue? Seeing none, let's go to the expense budget, which is page 184, the Finance Department expense budget. Mr. Mayor, I've got a question on this budget. There was a position, I believe, that was added to the budget to help with the grant writing, or rather the grant tracking process. We talked about this at the quarterly review. That position has been held open to date and not filled. Is that the part-time clerk position, or which position is that in the budget?
It wasn't a position, it was dollars added to the fees and professional services line.
Okay, so it's not listed as either the part-time clerk or anything like that, it's in fees and professional services?
Yes, sir.
I think, Mr. Flynn, to be clear, this is another one of the cases I'm going to suggest you're both right. When
Right.
it was first done, it was a part-time position, then it was changed at the RTM level to be just fees and not a position.
Right. Thank you. So that's up in the 66,500. What number of the 66,500 is that, do you know?
62?
It's that high of it?
No,
Can you get us that exact number?
because it's 3 million, excuse 3 million. We
3
pay,
million?
we
Can I have
pay,
that, John?
we pay $3,608 from a guy who's on pension for a long time, that by contract is paid out of the fees and professional services line item of the finance budget. So I think that that's the only thing that's in there besides this, yes? Oh, excuse me, I only have half here. It's 7,200, not it's 6,500 for the year.
Okay, so
I
what's
only
the-
have the
what's
7
the
minutes.
number of the clerk?
So 70, the clerk is in the Board of Finance budget.
Not the clerk. What's the number of the,
So the pension number is 6,500 or 7,500? 6,500. So there's 60,000 fees and services available for professional services or other expenditures to do some of the things that we talked about doing.
okay, so the number's 60,000.
Correct.
All right, and that hasn't, none of that has been used right now.
We used, I think, we've used $9,000 this year.
Okay. Any other questions on this budget? Go ahead, Mr. Timniak.
Do you do payroll out of the finance department?
Yes.
Is that something has ever been analyzed to look at for
Yes.
outsourcing?
Yes.
When the conclusion was,
It's a lot cheaper to do it in-house.
it is?
In fact, that was just reviewed, I think, 2 years ago, based on a request from one of the RTM members, who suggested that we talk to a number of towns around, and they were just spending a lot more than we were.
In Greenwich, you looked at Greenwich, right? The number was
Correct.
really
That was,
high.
that was the town that was pointed out, and when we talked to them, they hadn't realized the savings they projected. It was a much higher number. We just don't have that many bodies involved in it.
Mr. Bateson, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. Bob, I'm sorry, the CFO salary, is that, that 156.7, is that, if I go back to what we approved in the middle of the summertime for department heads, is that where I would find that salary? It just seemed, percentage-wise, it seemed a little high.
6%.
There was-
Reading the newspaper at
that's
the time, I thought we were shaking out somewhere around 3% for department heads.
There's 3%, and then, but happy, or, I don't know, happy or sad to say, I passed my 5-year mark. So I get a 3% longevity bump. So the total bump is 6%.
Oh, just for this year?
Correct.
Well, wait, and I'm not, but the
5 year? I thought it
longev-
was 20.
Well, if you remember the documentation that I shared with this board comparing my salary and duties and responsibilities, I think everybody agreed I was well underpaid.
Oh, we owe you a lot of money.
We'll take that up on your 20th anniversary. In all seriousness, though, you talked about longevity, and I'm not, trying to make, you're not union, though, right? So what's the thing about longevity? I don't understand.
That is a component that's been part of the department head salary package.
Okay, so that's, but they're not under union contract. I've always thought that the longevity bonuses, and again, don't read into the question, I'm trying to understand. I always thought that the longevity bonuses were part of the union contracts, not part of anything having to do with management or department heads. Is that right?
When you say always, no, it's been there as long as I've been, it was there when I got here 5 years ago, and that's, I think it mirrors
Mid-management.
the mid-management contract in that respect.
there's-
Right, we're just following, it's not contractually obligated, but mid-managers get it, so we give it to
That's been the way it's
department
been
heads.
for
Yeah, what
department heads.
department heads don't get is step increases.
They don't get steps.
Only union people get step increases plus longevity. Department heads get the longevity. I know, that was part of the budgeting, or part of the salary process way back when I was on the Board of Finance.
So, when's your 5-year anniversary?
It was February something, I don't remember, 19,
Okay, so we're already past that date?
yes.
So has this been put into effect yet?
I haven't seen an increase in my paycheck yet, but hopefully the next one.
Tom, time flies when you're having fun,
I
Tom.
was going to say we could have let him go on January 30th, but what in this whole conversation?
You've got to parse the words very carefully, realize he has direct deposit, he won't see it in his paycheck.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't revisited the department head memo. I think this is something that Flato had done 10 years ago, this memo. Can we get that again? Have it recirculated? I haven't seen it in a year or two.
Sure.
Happy to get that distributed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in this department? Seeing none, we're done with the Finance Department. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. We're going to go on to another discussion, and I want to kind of jump into this a little bit. Can we go to page 135, which is fund balance? And I just want to step this through for a minute. I did some work on this myself this afternoon. All right. The entire increase is being driven, the increase is to go to 1.4 million of contribution to surplus in the next fiscal year from a budgeted in 2017 of 550,000. And this was based on
And
a
Mr. Flynn,
policy.
if I might,
Yeah.
just to clarify for everybody, that includes the $9 million expense.
Well, that's where I'm
item.
going.
Okay.
Let me- So this is based on a policy that we passed a couple of years ago relative to growing the fund balance and making sure that we started to move more in line with the other AAA-related communities, which we were falling behind in and had gotten some negative commentary on. But this 1.4 million not only includes the operating increase, let me call it that, of $4.8 million, which is the regular operating increase. It also includes the $9 million that is being applied to us from the state. That brings us actually to a total of 13.8 million. And what's interesting is, there's kind of a circular reference in this calculation, where then we say, well, because we went up 13.8 million, we have to add 1.3 million in spending in order to do the surplus, in order to keep that consistent. And because we're adding 1.3 million into the surplus, we also have to add another $100,000 into the surplus because we got to account for the fact that our spending went up by the 1.3 million. So we actually calculate the 1.48 million on the incremental increase in the surplus, right? So there's an argument to be made that you shouldn't actually be calculating your increase in the surplus and what you need to spend in the surplus, and to calculate how much you have to increase the surplus, right? Which saves us $100,000 against this number. It would say we need to put in roughly $1.3 million versus $1.4 million per this calculation, right? So that's number one. Second part of this is, truly the discussion point to have is, and I'm not taking a position on it one way or another, but it's kind of interesting, is if you take out, Mr. Tetra, like you talked about, the $9 million, which is raising our spending, we're actually going up about $950,000 additional in this budget related to the $9 million increase in pension. So we're essentially penalizing ourselves again, spending-wise, right, by adding that $900,000 into the fund balance increase. So we're going up $1.4 million because of that $9 million spending increase that may be imposed on us. If that weren't imposed on us, we would largely be flat year over year
Oh, correct.
in this surplus. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's
It does to me.
something
We
that-
spent a lot of time looking at that.
Huh?
We spent a lot of time looking at
Yeah, and
that.
I think I mean, you and I didn't
Yeah.
talk about it, but I think I summarized what's going on. Exactly, right?
You said it exactly right, and it's clear to me, yes,
Yeah.
But you followed the policy.
correct.
Right. So I raise it just because it's something as we get closer, if we get more information on the state related to that $9 million, we get more information, on what's going on there. This is a discussion point that I don't presuppose we have this discussion now, but it is something as we get later in the budget process that we should talk about.
I think that at twofold, Mr. Flynn, I think you're right on the money, because I think at some point, if the $9 million goes away, we wouldn't need that incremental amount here. We'd also then have to, and I think it's going to fall to this board based on timing, what happens to the $9 million that we have in the budget that potentially isn't being spent? Is that reallocated to other expense categories? Do we restore some services? Is that in fact refunded to the taxpayers, and or a balance of two? Could be a hybrid situation. So I'm not suggesting we spend a lot of time talking about that now,
Right.
but I just want to, since I think it's going to come back to this board, I want everybody, as you're looking at these things, look at it from that standpoint.
And if we look at it that way, that the $9 million number actually becomes $9.9 million.
Correct.
So it's something that, it's something that we can talk about as we get further on. Now, Mr. Walsh, very articulately at the last meeting, discussed what we're hearing, in the Fund Balance Committee, and what he's hearing talking to our advisors related to what other AAA-related communities are doing and stuff like that. Can I ask for a homework assignment here? Mr. Tetro, as you and Mr. Mayor start looking at what the other AAA towns are doing in Connecticut relative to the governor's budget, can you come back to us on this item as to what they're doing relative to their fund balances specifically related to the governor's budget? Are they, A, using their fund balance to help mitigate some of the risk of the governor's budget? Are they, B, doing nothing with their fund balance and letting it ride? Or are they, C, like we're doing in this budget, adding to the fund balance and including the impact of the increased expenses?
I'll
Because
be,
we really want to know what those other towns are doing relative to ourselves, in
yeah, I'll
my
be,
opinion.
yep. I think that's good. I'll be happy to check so we can take a look at that. What I'm seeing from the towns that I've talked to, and I haven't done a complete survey, the approach we're taking is the most conservative.
Right.
The most common answer out there is folks are basically ignoring the pension payment and assuming that's going to go away.
Right.
So if I look at, let's pick
Yeah.
Westport for one, that's what they're doing. They're
They are doing that. You're right.
correct.
But they have the luxury to some degree, because I've seen some of the quotes from that town, that if they do get hit with it, they have like a 15 or 16% fund balance. So for them, they're like, yeah, we'll play it with fund balance. That's what we're going to do. If it comes down and we really have to write that check,
Well,
we're going to do it with fund balance because we're so almost overfunded on fund balance.
Well, and
I
by the way,
just- yeah.
Mr. Walsh, that's another aspect. It's a very good
Yeah.
point. That's part of what should be included in the analysis. Westport, they're at 15%. They're going to use fund balance to cover this, some
Well, I
other
think
community-
that
Yeah, you're
Again, it's-
making,
it's not all, if I can finish, it's not all fund balance. I mean, they have that as I'm going to call it Plan B. Okay. But what towns are talking about is basically, if that comes through, raising their mill rate.
Right.
So they're going forward with a lower mill rate and then coming back later. The challenge in that, the mill rate issue, is that you need to send tax bills out in June or very early July in order to keep the cash flow moving forward. So as much as you can raise the mill rate later, you may not have that option.
Right.
Do you have the ability, I heard you say that we have the ability to raise it, not lower it the last time. But if we, say we set a mill rate and it was the July payment, we could raise it for the next 3 quarters? because our taxes are paid quarterly, right? Some people, unfortunately, would get caught up in that because they would make a full year payment.
I think you're correct. At this point, we know we can.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of logistical issues in terms of how we normally send out the tax bill. You got the 4 tear sheets on that to send things back in. How we do that, whether we do that as a special assessment on top of that. There's a number of logistical things, but right now, the way we're looking, we're not planning on raising the mill rate, but I want to make sure we have that flexibility. And I think if we get closer to this date and we're looking at doing something like that, then I think then we need to look into logistically how we do that to make sure if this board's going to consider that they understand what the impact is all the way through.
And I do think this is going to be a key element, so I think I'll go back to, I'd like to know to the best of our abilities what the other AAA towns are doing. You know, we've always said we want to be middle of the pack on this. We don't want to be the leaders because we don't want to tie up people's money unnecessarily. So I'd like to know how they're handling it.
We will do that.
Thank you very much.
And I will get everyone the current fund balance numbers, because I have them now through the CAFRs that everyone filed on December 31st.
Great. So do we have anything else to talk about on fund balance? Really, it's a,
Yes, we do.
go ahead.
Would you pass that out, please? This is thanks to Mr. Walsh. The other day, when Mr. Walsh commented on his comments in the discussions with Matt Sprundle,
Thank you.
he mentioned that the rating agencies focus mostly on the gap basis, and I mentioned that, well, when I talk with him, I focus on the budget basis. So I called Matt, and both comments turned out to be correct, right? We put the numbers together. We kind of, when I speak with the rating agencies, here's our policy. Our policy is based on budget. Here's where we are. Blah 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 blah. In the meantime, they go back, they adjust it to the gap basis, and they compare all the towns on a gap basis. So why this is extra interesting this year? So if you look at the top, you see that we need the 1.43 mil to maintain the fiscal year 18 at the projected fiscal year 17 amount of 9.53. Now, when you get down to the bottom on the gap basis, it's going to be a little bit complex. So the difference, the major, maybe pretty much the only from a meaningful perspective, difference between the gap budget and the budget, or the gap basis and the budget basis number, is the $20 million that the state reports out in the past that they were paying for our teachers' pensions. So and that's in our CAFR. I'm not sure what page, page 41 or something, I think. I don't remember. But the number's in the CAFR. So if you assume that the $9 million that we're paying for the pension plan will be a reduction of what the state's paying for the pension plan, then that $20 million number that is added to the budget basis to get to the gap basis would be reduced from 20 million to 11 million.
Right, because it'd be double counted.
Correct. So if you look at the second,
What you're saying is it's already factored in.
I'm not sure what you mean, but what I'm saying
Well,
is,
if they're looking at the total debt and
Right.
they're looking at the total debt and they're saying the total debt includes what the state's paying on our behalf.
right,
When they do analysis of our issue, right, of our numbers, they're already including the fact that they're paying that 20 million, at which we don't include that when we calculate what we put in.
right,
So by putting in the 9 million into our numbers and then calculating the surplus or our contribution to surplus on top of that, we're actually topping off more than we need to because they already count it without us putting it in because
Right.
it was at the state level. Is that a fair
Right.
comment?
I think I understand what you're saying, yes. So on a GAAP basis, by that money being transferred out of the state, the GAAP basis difference is only 11 million now, not 20 million. So to maintain, so if we were to all of a sudden to say we want our policy to be on the GAAP basis versus the budgetary basis, you see that fiscal year 17, as Mr. Walsh pointed out the other day, is 8.95% projected. I think you had 8.89 or something, but something close to that. So if we were to put in the $1.4 million and use $11 million as the STRB, that would increase our GAAP basis from 8.95 to 9.2. And if we wanted to maintain, do the do no harm policy, we would only be required to put in $620,000 to maintain the GAAP basis at 8.95.
Right. So you're kind of reaching the same,
Right.
we're reaching the same conclusion that we've got some play in this number, perhaps.
Appears to be a few ways to look at it that I was not fully aware of.
Yeah.
Did you do the analysis for fiscal year 19 where we're not getting any money and they're putting it this way, we get a $19 million credit against that? Because that's probably where it's going to be going.
Well, then,
If we were to get the 19 million, right, on this particular issue, if the 19 was carried at the state and we weren't accruing against that or calculating against that, or the 19 million is carried at the town and we're not accruing against that, it's the same darn thing. It's just as to where it's being accounted for, if they're accounted for it anyway.
If we could not spend any time talking about more than 9 million, I'd appreciate that.
Right. Good luck with that. Okay. We good on fund balance then? Thank you,
That's
Mr.
it.
Mayor. Rebecca?
If we're looking at other AAAs, are we looking at what basis they're using then? So we're on the same page? Is that,
yeah, the information that Mr. Sprendel furnished Mr. Wallace is all GAAP.
it is all,
So-
and other, I mean, comparative to the other towns are included in that basis? Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Good discussion. I appreciate that. Let's go to page 43. This is revenue related to the assessor. First of all, are there any questions, comments from the public related to the finance or related to our conversation on fund balance? Question, comments, concerns from the public? Seeing none, we'll go on to page 43. I've gotten bad at that, so I want to make sure I do that. Welcome.
So, I'd like to introduce Ken Carvel, who I don't know if, he's not presented here before. He's the deputy assessor of the town, who's stepping in while we're searching for a assessor, and he's doing a marvelous, fantastic job and working his tail off. But he got us through the grand list.
I don't know about the wonderful part, but
But
I'm
got
certainly
us through
working.
got us through the grand list without having to file for an extension.
Yep.
And that was good, and beautiful work, and it's all yours.
Fantastic. I must admit, this is my first time, so if you'd be patient with me, that'd be appreciated. And I'm trying to get a feel for people that were before me, and revenue seems to be big.
Well, you-
And so I just had a little bit to start off with. One of the budget items that you're going to happen upon is in relation to audits, and it's an expenditure of $20,000, and the follow-up question is, obviously, how much do we see coming back? And historically, the last time we went through the audit process, it came back 110,000. So, you know, from a return standpoint, when you're looking at that item, now it gives you a little bit of a feel for what's coming back.
We should give
And,
you the rest of our investments.
Yeah, that's it. And then the other item that, you know, in the various processes that we do within the office, we're doing a lot of physical inspections of properties, whether they be real estate, personal property, and from a real estate standpoint, through prorating onto the grand list for the portion of the tax year that dwellings or buildings are actually complete, we were able to increase by 9.3 million in assessed value, which translated into 236,000 and change, you know, over and above, you know, from what the overall grand list was during the year, if you will. And that's pretty much what I had to share from a standpoint of the function of the office.
Okay. Any questions on revenue?
Sure.
Mr. Walsh?
Oh, actually, no, I'm not, no, I'm sorry. I was asking, I might have more of a question for the tax collector. Sorry about that.
Anyone else?
No, we're looking at the budget now. We were looking at revenue.
Yeah.
We were looking at revenue, now we'll go to the budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And the budget is found on page 192. So, is there anything in particular you'd like to start off and share with us about the budget? Or
Well, I mean, what seems to be, everything seems pretty much in line, but the one outlier that I guess, you know, people's eyes are going to go to is the software portion of the overall budget. And an awful lot of that is in relation to QDS, our administrative software that we use, and that's for within their fund for licensing and maintenance fees, as well as we've kind of expanded our we got into using the system, and then obviously as we get more immersed in it, we become aware of other features that we can take advantage of. So we have kind of expanded some of the services that we've used with them as well, in an effort to be more efficient, if you will. But that would be, you know, if I were trying to buzz to one particular area, and then the other is that seems to be a movement, if you will, would be in relation to the assessor's fees and professional services, and that we're kind of going a little bit on a downward trend on that from a standpoint of what we were anticipating. We had, I believe, 300 people go to the Board of Assessment of Appeals last year, and with that, we had a caseload for people that took us to court of about 38, which translates into about 12.5% or whatever it happens to be. Within this budget, we were anticipating somewhere probably around the likes of 200 appeals coming through, and then with that, you know, maybe 25 that would actually progress or move forward in the courts. That's the projection, and who's to say if that's going to take place? But I can tell you one part of the equation is when this was all formulated, it was before the Board of Assessment Appeal had, you know, the filing period had ended.
Right.
And so we were anticipating what was it going to be. Well, now it has ended, and we know we have 125.
Okay.
So, you know, that's not to say we might not use the 25 that we have allocated, but if you were to use the percentages, you'd say, okay, well, maybe you're only going to expect 16 then, if you were 12 and a half last time. But you don't know what that is going to be. So what it comes down to is that was the logic that formulated that number.
Okay, thank you. Turn it over.
No, go right ahead, Mary, you run the department.
Okay. Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. So, on your fees and professional services, so you're underrunning this year, so I'm expecting that now that you've got the right number, that number will probably come in light anyway, right?
Well,
Of the 142, right?
Yeah, it could come, oh, yes, definitely. I would think so.
Right.
You know,
Based on your projection for this
yeah,
year,
unless it, yeah.
seems based on the reality of this year, right? So that's good
Yeah,
news.
that's where, I would hope that we'd be a lot calmer, that's for sure.
Right. And just on the IT software, thank you for the explanation. Is it just QDS? Is that the only piece of
No,
software
no,
that you manage, or?
No, there are a couple of others that are contributing. That was the lion's share of it. It's like 5,000 is in there, in that wheelhouse. But then there's an additional amount for funding and licensing for the Office Vision software that we use, as well as there are a couple of GIS components that are actually, one is about $800, the other one around $2,000. So that's the balance, if you will. That's of the 8,000, 5,000 is with the QDS, and then it breaks down with the other three items, Office Vision, and then the two GIS programs that we utilize.
It's actually, Mr. Walsh just pointed out, it is in your budget summary, so thank you. I was just curious because, we got a new IT director, and wondering that, making sure that we're taking advantage of shared IT services for, Windows and things like that. So
Yeah.
you're literally paying just for your unique software within your department, nothing else.
That is, and facing the facts, when I needed them, and especially this year, and believe me, they did a great job for me. I'd love to say I did it myself, but I certainly had a lot of help, that's for sure.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Carvel, that IT number, is that going to be like a yearly ask for approximately the same amount? Is that a yearly fee, or is that we buy the software one time and it's where we don't have to buy it again?
It's a yearly fee, as I understand.
Yearly licensing fee?
Yes.
Maintenance fee.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Question on the, it's not a lot of money, but motor vehicle, did I miss this? Did you guys already talk about this when I was out of the room?
No.
What's going on with the motor vehicle? It's going up like $1,000.
Well, we used to have one of the natural gas vehicles, and then they went away, or the one that was assigned to our department, and then we got a Crown Vic, and which is.
There was no halfway going in there, was there?
Yeah, they thought I'm a relatively big guy, so they gave me the Crown Vic, which I appreciated, but obviously it's going through, the fuel costs are really the wagging the dog, if you will.
It was the Hummer in the shop, so you ended
Yeah.
up with a Crown Vic.
That's it.
All right.
Any other questions? Mr. Timniak?
Yes. In fiscal year 14, did you have one less employee than you do now?
I would have to, I must admit, I'm scrambling, but
Okay.
I believe it was a situation where we had an allocation going on, where there was a split personnel between the tax collector and the assessor's office.
was, yes.
For that portion of that time frame.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going by memory.
Yeah. I know you had the reval years in there, but I'm looking
Yeah.
at the large swing between 1.1 million in 16 and 700,000 now.
Right.
It got my eyes going all the way back to fiscal year 14 at 581, and I'm wondering if we should be more aligned with 581. That's why I asked the employee question.
Yeah.
Any questions from anyone else? Okay, anyone from the public? Okay, thank you very much. Very nice job for your first time explaining.
Thank you very much. You
Thank
made
you.
it.
Thanks,
you
Mr.
made it
Carvel.
painless.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
And I appreciate it.
Oh, we're not done yet. No.
Run.
Page 205.
That was cruel.
Guy's not going
All
to
right.
sleep for another 3 weeks.
All right, page 205, the Board of Finance. Couple questions here. Fees and professional services, is this just an assumption that there's going to be increase in the audit costs?
The original estimate we got from Mr. Sanafani was $103,000.
So you think you can get it down with his new firm or with a replacement firm for 82,225?
Well, that's minus the allocation to the pension plan.
Got it, okay. Question on that. You and the audit committee are going to put together an RFP and send it out to a variety of different firms for
Yeah,
consideration?
basically, it's probably, there's a lot of activity going on in purchasing, but it's probably right now the number one priority to get that out. We have a couple of samples. We have the one we used last time we got a new town, so we're hoping to get that out, soon. We will obviously, when I say get it out, the process is write it in-house, share it with the audit committee, and get it out, then mail it out.
Yeah, please keep us informed, particularly of the firms that you're going to send it to. And I do, unless anybody objects, I do think Mr. Senafani's firm should be, his new firm should be considered for this. Does anybody have a problem with that? No? Okay, Mr. DeWitt?
Just curious, what advertising does the Board of Finance do?
That's when we post the budget.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But what travel and meetings are we going to that I'm missing? Because I don't get,
That's my CLE costs. I couldn't help myself. Sorry.
That didn't even take 24 hours.
that was 22 hours on the dot.
If you would join the Bridgeport Legal Society, you can get them for cheaper.
All right, reduce it to 50.
What is there? I mean, I don't get that, to be honest with you.
It's a new item. I have no idea.
It was a new item last year.
Budget candy.
Yeah, it's the budget
Somebody submitted a contribution, an expense report for the donuts last year.
Okay, so Jim,
No,
before you
that's
ask the question.
Not true.
I can give $100 to the
Drive to our meetings.
the travel and meeting expense. Okay, anybody else? Mr. Becker?
Just on the advertising one, that's a state statute that's having us publish? That's the charter that's having us do that, okay. And so I don't have to ask this for every single department moving forward. Can we just maybe have all the departments just answer my question in regards to state and then any sort of, charter or a local ordinance that's forcing them into advertising with the newspapers, and if they could just get a summary, maybe ask all the departments, so every single department that comes here, I don't have to ask the same question. If there's any confusion on what I'm asking, just email me tomorrow and we can clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Yeah. If Mr. Walsh didn't ask so many questions, we could probably cut the secretarial services charge as well, right?
We could. Or we can double it.
All right. Any other questions on the Board of Finance? Moving on. All right. That's, any comments, questions from the public on that one? Okay. We'll go to page 317, debt service. 317.
It even has its own tab.
Mr. Mayor, it goes without saying, this all ties to the waterfall schedules and has been run by Mr. Spurndle.
Correct.
Okay, is there anything of note on here that's different from prior years, other than the fact that the bond premium impact was budgeted separately, and we talked about that earlier?
No, this is straight, but actually what we do with this is, we don't just look at the waterfall, we compare it to the backing up a bit, there used to be a service that provided, a bank that provided services for tracking and maintaining your debt service schedules.
Yep.
And the vendor we used left the business, and we went out to bid a little bit, and we decided we could bring it in-house and save money. So we have our own schedules where we track it. But what we do when we put the schedule together here, we use our schedules, then we send our schedules to bond counsel to compare with his schedules, because he's tracking it as well. And knock on wood, we haven't had any differences, but if we did, then we would reconcile. So it's consistent with the waterfall, our schedules, and bond counsel schedule.
there any questions on debt service for anybody right now? Okay. We spent a lot of time through the year talking about
The
this.
only other quick, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but
Yeah.
the last line item, there's electrical loan payments, remember that?
Mhm.
That's on the schedule now.
That
That's the
has
last
to be
item.
on this because and those are all the different initiatives, the green initiatives we're doing, which result in bonds or in
Right.
commitments to pay in the future.
Right.
That's our 0% loan, right? That,
Well, if it was a 0% loan, it wouldn't be on here, because it wouldn't have any, oh, yes, it would. Yeah, this is the payments principal, right, excuse me, that was a dumb thing to say.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but all of, some of them are 0 and some of them, right, yeah.
And Mr. Walsh?
Under the-
There's embedded interest is,
Yeah.
On page 317, the interest due on bond anticipation notice, and there's the use of band premium. That's completely separate than what we had done before, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure we're not double counting. Okay, and then my other question is, the electric loan payments, are there also electric loan payments in DPW, or are they all right here? For some of those
You mean WPCA?
WPCA. Well, I guess some of the stuff that we've gotten some of those electric savings on, is that everything in here? Everything's in here. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on debt service? Anything from the public? Seeing none, we're going to take I'm going to make it 5-minute break here, 5-minute recess at 9 o'clock. It's per our, how we said we want to operate. So let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll do culture and recreation. We'll start with Parks and Recreation. So, Mr. Calabrese, if you want to come up and get ready, that's fine. 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
I have a handout for you. You might appreciate.
handout
If it has to do with revenues and expenses, I'm sure we would.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we're on,
We're starting with revenue?
we're starting with revenue, and we're on page 49 to start.
No, nobody's there.
So then let's keep this to Parks and Recs, thank you,
Thank you.
as opposed to the waterfront, the marina, and the golf courses right now. So the Park and Recs revenue is about $275,000, which is about an 18% jump from last year. Mr. Calabrese, you want to talk to us about it?
Yep, absolutely. Basically, the increase is due to increase in program fees, pretty much across the board, youth programs, soccer, basketball. The tennis concessions go up, so we get a rental fee through there. Bonfires, we started charging for. Those sell out. We increased, that's pretty much it on the rec side. But that it accounts for about $275,000.
Okay, and in the document that you handed out to us, it was $275,000 in revenue versus $718,000 in expense plus health insurance. But correct me if I'm wrong, that's fully loaded all within the Park and Rec Administration budget, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Does anybody have questions, particularly on the revenue of the Parks and Recs Commission? Now, that's all under the auspices of your commission, correct?
Correct.
And you guys voted, what was the percentage increase you guys voted this year on those fees? Did you do it on a percentage basis? Did you do it fee by fee? How did that work?
No, we win pretty much program by program. Some of them we felt were in the range of where they should be in the market value. There's only so much of, I don't want to say market saturation that you can do, but at some point you hit the sweet spot and you don't want to go over, otherwise you start losing revenue.
Do you guys ever end programs because they're no longer, because there's third-party providers that provide them more efficiently, or that we're losing too much money on them?
If we're losing money, absolutely, we would look to either outsource it or come up with a different spin on it. I don't believe that there's too many people that offer programs as well as we do, or as efficiently. And I don't say that in a bragging way, but we are able to offer all the programs we do at an affordable cost to all that most outside contractors can't do. So it's rare that we lose a program, but if we have insufficient enrollment or something like that, different
Did you sunset
fads.
any this year?
No, actually, our enrollment's through the roof. We actually just had our spring enrollment for summer camps, and as usual, we sold out within minutes. Long wait lists, so we are opening those up to more spots to get more kids in. We'll hire more staff, so they all, it's all fully supporting, so it works.
Do we have questions, Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thank you. Tennis concession, is that Fairfield Tennis?
That is the tennis bubble.
Yeah, and when the joint venture with building that, how long are we locked into that? Is that 10 or 20 years?
It's a 20-year lease.
Okay.
And then we go, that's just the year-round. We do a summer lease with them as well, because the town used to run the summer programs there. So that's a separate lease, but it's included in this cost.
Right, and I'm assuming that the change in here in between years is just a step increase, and that's...
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions on the revenue side? I have one for you, if there's no others. So you're talking about how quickly everything sells out, which means that the demand is much more than your supply, which I'm not saying it's got to be like a private enterprise where you make money at it, but how do you then set prices, and did you raise them enough if the demand is so high that you're still selling out within minutes?
Well, a lot of it comes down, depending on the program, a lot of it comes down to the facilities that we offer. Summer camp is a good example. A lot of times we can only max out at 200 kids, and again, that's a lot of times due to the field trips on where we take the kids. Indoor places can't hold more than 200 if you're talking like a rock and jump or a nutmeg bowl. Anytime you try busing 300-plus kids somewhere, you've got to be outdoors or you've got to split the trip in half. So we try to get as many kids in the programs as possible.
I wasn't actually talking about, thanks for the answer, I understand that. I wasn't talking about the volume, I was more talking about the rate. If the demand is so high for those programs, that means that if those programs are in fact losing money, or you're not making enough money on them, or you're not covering your overall expenses by them, you can actually raise the rate a little bit more and still have the same number of kids participate.
Sure, and we did raise those rates again this year. They all did jump up. So the programs themselves cover the costs. What they're not covering in total, and as you see, is the staffing, is the full-time staffing in the office, the six of us, well, the six that are budgeted for in the office. So, yeah, correct.
Right. And how do you, when you go about looking at the rates you're charging, do you look at what other towns charge for similar programs? In other words, how do we know? And again, I'm not suggesting you need to raise rates and, that it's got to be a private enterprise. I just want to know that we're pricing it appropriately, and I have no sense of how we know that.
Well, we do. We absolutely, we call around, when I go to the conferences and all that, we talk about rates. We look at other brochures and other websites to see where we fall in the market. And normally, we're right in the middle of the pack where we should be. Occasionally, we're on the low end, and when we see that, we bump it up. I think the big thing to keep in mind here is that the staff, the full-time staff, doesn't just do recreation.
Understand.
All these other budgets that we're going to go through, we also have parts in. So in total, I do believe that we do cover our costs, but maybe not just strictly with the rec programs that you're seeing here.
No, that's fair enough. It was a pricing question more so, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from board members on revenue-related items?
I presume that you've got to also take into account that there's different socioeconomic diversity in this town, right? So you have to kind of...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we do offer scholarships for free and reduced lunch as well. So there are kids that do need these programs, so we try to keep them reasonable for all.
Great. Approximately what percentage of the students would get, or campers would get scholarships? Is it like 10% or 5%, or is it?
It's between 5 and 10.
Okay, that's great.
If it's 10, it would be high.
Great, okay.
Any other items? All right, let's go on to the expense side of the budget, which is on page 290, I believe. 290, 291. Questions on the expense budget, and again, to Mr. Calabrese's point, this is where we house the 5 or 6 different professional staff, as well as some of the overhead that covers not just the Park and Recs programs, but also supports a lot of the other functions, the Penfield and the golf and all that, correct, Mr. Calabrese?
That is correct.
So the budget is largely flat with the prior year, up about $3,000. Questions, comments, anybody? On this budget, Mr. DeWitt?
No, I'm just,
Oh, sorry.
just wait 1 second.
I'm kind of like a carnival barker here when you raise your hand or something. Right. Go ahead, Mr. Bateson.
Seasonal payroll, I see it went up like 4,000 or 5,000. Is that an expansion of services?
No, that is actually, all the seasonal payroll that you'll see here is for our special needs program, which runs year-round. We offer a summer program, drop-in program, and a weekend program, and this is just based on the 25-cent jump from the increase in minimum wage. The whole scale moves up.
Right. Question. Mr. Becker?
Just, not so much specifically this budget, but don't we, and maybe you're going to hand this out, but don't we normally get a copy of like the revolving funds statement too?
Yes. Do you have that this
I
evening?
do not have that this evening, but I can get that for you.
Would you please follow up with
Absolutely.
it, with the revolving fund? Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Becker. Any other questions on this budget? Mrs. Leclerc?
Could you talk about the fees and professional service line? Actually went down this year, so I'm wondering what's in it and what aren't we doing?
Fees and professional services, that consists of the concerts on the Sherman Green, the fireworks, and the Memorial Day Parade. What we did here was we reduced this line and tried to pick up more sponsors for the concerts on the Sherman Green. So that's where that money all went.
Okay,
And
thank
we've been fairly successful doing that so far. I think we can do better, but the goal would be eventually, I think, to try to get that line down to almost nothing, to get sponsors to pay for everything, which would be nice.
That would be great.
It's a goal, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you. And we'll go on. Does the public have any comment on this? I'm trying to be better at this. Does the public have any comment? All right. Let's go on to the
I'm sorry, Tom.
Pavilion Complex. I'm sorry. did
Quick
I miss
thing, can we just go back, from
Absolutely.
an accounting standpoint,
you? Yeah.
what he just said about sponsorship, do you want to, going forward, carry that as a revenue item?
Well, we can discuss it.
Okay, just maybe, going, if that starts to be a bigger number, maybe,
Instead of doing it as an offset, do it as a revenue item and break
Right,
it out
then-
separately.
right.
Quite possible, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Bateson, I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, can you take a note on that? Leave it to the former accountant to do that. All right. Let's move on to the Penfield Pavilion Complex. It was page 48 for the revenue on this, page 48. Yes.
Just, I know we don't have the revolving account statement, but Mr. Bateson's question, I think, kind of prompted a thought here.
Yep.
But similar to, with the sponsorships and perhaps maybe in the way that the revolving account works, but aren't those expenditures, while they're being covered through that account, aren't they expenditures that are above the overall budget? So how is that, that we're doing that without a separate approval, similar to like a grant that nets out, but it still needs to be approved because it exceeds
Mr. Mayor, do you want to take
budgeted
this?
amount?
Thank you, Mr. Becker. And Mr. Bateson does raise a good point. So, Mr. Mayor, do you want to handle this?
Sorry, I was working on a schedule. I didn't hear the question, I apologize.
So
problem.
there's funds that come in for sponsorships of certain items, and then those funds are expended, and it never, those funds come in and they come out, much like the revolving fund. So there are expenditures over and above the budget amounts, right? How does that work? How is that possible? How is that reasonable, given that those funds aren't appropriated?
And same, how is it possible with the revolving account, I guess, too, right? And that they're expenses that aren't in the budget,
So you have town administration.
right? Because if we expend over our budgeted amount, usually there has to be approval specific to that, like a grant, even if it's a law or something like that. So in theory, that and the revolving.
No, and I hear what you're saying, and it makes total and absolute sense. I don't know if there's some hitch in the way the revolving accounts are accounted for separately or differently, and I'll find out.
Yeah, thank you.
And we do want to, I think this is an appropriate discussion when we see the revolving fund numbers.
Yeah.
Because there's also some policies relative to the amount that you're allowed to keep in the revolving fund and what gets swept into the general fund, so we should take a look at that as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that is a pertinent follow-up
Yeah,
item. so
yeah, it's
thank you.
important. I mean, as we just talked earlier in the debt service, one of the goals we've always had, not always had, that I've had since I started here, is to show everything broad. And there's
Correct.
a lot of things that used to be net that are now broad, and this is a new one for me, and thank you very much for the
Yeah.
question.
And please take note of Mr. Bateson's comment regarding the revenue on these sponsorships, because
Right.
that wouldn't be bad to have
Right.
separately broken out as
To-
well.
Totally agree with that one as well.
Are we saying we might have to adjust the budget to put a revenue line in and then net it against a higher expense?
We have to, let's wait and see how it plays out, but
Okay.
we've had this revolving fund that's been around forever, and gets swept at, Mike, do you remember what amount?
200.
Swept, was it over
I think
200? I don't-
It's, I'm going to leave it to Mr. Calabrese, who's probably more familiar with that number. but it's-
200,000.
I think it's every September it gets swept,
Yeah,
if I remember the timing.
Yep, that's correct.
but we haven't seen it in a while. Do you know off the top of your head what the number in there is right now?
In the account itself right now, no, I do not know, I'm sorry.
All right, no, that's okay, I mean, we understand, but it would be pertinent to the discussion. Any other questions? All right, thank you, everybody, on that budget. Let's go on to Penfield Pavilion now. We're going to go to page 48, and again, look at revenue. And do you want to walk us through, kind of, step us through the assumptions that you use for this? Obviously, you now have a fully operational pavilion,
That's correct.
fully operational Death Star.
Yep, so with the new pavilion opening up, we are estimating right now about $52,000 in locker rental fees. We have 8 fewer lockers than we did when we opened up in 2011, 2012. But the rates did increase for residents. It went up $100, seniors went up for $60, and for non-residents went up $200 and $120. So we have 194 lockers right now. I believe we'll actually rent out 193. We have to take one offline for a maintenance thing. That's that $52,000. Boat racks, those are just the, Mr. Walsh?
There's no daily lockers, is that why there's a zero line?
That is correct. There's
So
no
the
daily
new
locker.
pavilion, they're out.
They're not there. We have the ability to put them in if we deem so later on, but we didn't put them in originally. Thank you. You're welcome. Boat racks, those are your kayaks, sunfish, all those. Concession has not gone out to bid yet. It will be going out to bid. We've got a walkthrough next week. So we based that on historical numbers that we've used. Rentals were based on 100, for Jackie Durrell, about 110 rentals, which will bring in about 120,000. Penfield 1, that's the new building, about same, basically 100, 110 rentals for 120,000. And we're well ahead of where we expected to be, projections anyway, for the rentals.
Okay. Why? I'm a little surprised that we're expecting the same number, the same dollar amount of rentals for Penfield 1 versus Jackie Durrell, only because of the size?
The fee's the same right now. So we are bringing that to the commission for this next month, and they'll vote on increasing the fee at Penfield Pavilion.
And what are they, what's the recommendation? What's the fee?
I think we're working on that now in-house. So what I believe we want to do is set up a long-term plan, try to figure out where we want to be, say in 5 years. We're doing rentals 2 years out, and I think we need to phase it in as opposed to doing a 50% increase for next year. But as soon as the commission passes the rate, it would go into effect for any rental at that point. The rentals are the same fee right now because when they opened up the building, the thought was they didn't want to compete with Jackie Durrell and lose rentals there. They wanted people to come in, rent out Penfield 1, and realize what a great facility it is, and just try to play a numbers game there. But I think now that the building's open, we've had some open houses, we've got 3 more coming up, it is time to absolutely increase the rate.
There's
Go ahead.
also a much longer rental season at Penfield 1 versus Jackie Durrell. So I would think that would impact the number of rentals and how quickly it ramps up,
Yeah.
that also.
Yep.
So it's not just the
Right.
rate, it's the volume.
Well, and that's why I think, I mean, it sounds like we have some runway here. It sounds like this number's a little light.
I would say it's conservative.
All right.
But to be fair, they've got more information because they've got 3 more months of market data now than they had back when they were putting this together. So I think
Look,
that
it's not
perhaps we
criticism.
can adjust this based on new information that's
Yeah.
coming out with that.
Yeah, it's not a criticism of the fact that it's not adjusted right now. It's an observation that it would be, should be, could be light, and we should probably look to be making more revenue out of this asset in the next budget cycle. So I would encourage you guys to, speed up your deliberations so that we can adjust this in the budget book.
Yep, absolutely.
Could we ask that, once they do that, that we get a recommendation from Anthony about maybe what their thought process is on that, and maybe get some type of
Alright.
scientific,
Yeah.
number on what you think maybe that number should be adjusted to?
Absolutely.
Okay. You've been having open houses, you said?
We have, yeah.
For like caterers and things like that?
Well, the first one we did was for people that have rented the building sight unseen, which was quite a few. So we had over 100 renters come in. We've got another one, we've got the ribbon cutting on Tuesday, the 7th, and then we've got open houses on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Pretty much general public, more renters will come in. Caterers have been through, so it is all those wedding-type people that have been in there.
What has been the response from like
They love it.
caterers and things like that?
They absolutely love the space. There's always some things they would have liked to have seen added to the building, but for the most part, it has been it's been very well received.
Right. Good to hear.
So I just want to point out, I'm sorry, Mrs.
I
Martin.
just
go
have
right
a
ahead.
question. How far in advance can you rent it out?
2 years.
2
It used
years.
to be 1 year. We changed that several months ago to 2 years.
And are the fees different for in-town versus out-of-town residents?
They are. In town, it's anywhere from $950 if you were renting on, say, a Monday night, up to $1,100 for a weekend date, and then we have $1,300 for a premium date, which would be like New Year's or something along those lines. Non-residents right now, I believe, are $1,600.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I think it's $1,600 for a non-resident, regardless of the date they're going for.
Okay, good. So the commission is going to be looking at those fees, you said?
Yep, they're going to look at it at their next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, it's interesting, again, thank you. This was kind of the P&L by property was what we put in place a few years ago with Mr. Lombardo, so thank you for carrying that on. Just to point out on Penfield Complex, even what I think is with a low rate for the rental on Penfield 1, you're projecting $361,000 worth of revenue. Related variable expenses of $93,000. So net income on variable expenses of $269,000. The bonding amortization, which I presume you got from Mr. Mayor for the
That's
bonding of this, of $204,000. So you have a net income for the business, even with, like I said, this low revenue rate here of about $65,000.
Correct.
So that's good, and hopefully more than that.
I hope.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions on this?
No, I think it's great that they put the bonding amortization in.
I do too.
It's good.
So let's, if we're done with the revenue side of Penfield, let's quickly look at the expense side, which is 288, page 288. New flipping pages was going to be so darn hard. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Calabrese. Do you have any comments on the budget for the
Well,
town?
obviously, this budget has increased because we have a new building that's opening up. So we've got brand-new staff that has to be working that building. The building has to be cleaned, so there's some new maintenance things in there. But for the most part, it's a pretty safe budget. What I would say is, you could see that I did work with the first selectman on this one, and we did lower. We cut our seasonal payroll by 10%. So, just wanted to point that out. We're going to be changing the way we work our boathouse over there. We won't have 2 kids working it full-time. It's going to be more along the lines of, call us ahead of time or when you need help, and we'll send someone over to help you out. So there might be, a slight delay before we get there, but that's where that 10% is being saved.
Questions, comments, Mr. Walsh?
And they just off slightly, but is there a reason why on the first selectman's budget, the $90,747 is $2,000 less than the total expenses under the fiscal year 2018 on your, this form? Seems to be 92,747.
Sorry, that's probably, the first selectman's budget is correct. It was probably just a typo.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I just didn't know whether there's some other $2,000 expense.
Okay, I apologize.
No problem. Not a big deal.
All right, any other questions? Mr. DeWitt?
Contracted property services went to 0.
Correct.
Now, I know FY17 there wasn't any, but what is that?
It was
and
the
what?
porta potties that were down there.
Oh,
No longer need them. Building's open.
got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Questions? Others? None. Any questions from the public on Penfield? Okay, we'll come back to the board and we'll go to the waterfront. We'll go to revenue first, which is page 49. Can you tell us what's going on with the fees, Mr. Calabrese? What are you doing with the
I'll do my
fees?
best here.
Yeah.
All right, so what we did here was we increased the resident beach pass. That's the beach sticker that everybody was getting for $20. We increased that to $25 this year. We kept the senior rate at $10, so we didn't move them at all. So that increases our revenue. We kept lake passes the same. Really, that is the only thing we changed, was we went up $5.
What about the marina docket? We continue to hear year after year that some of our fees are some of the lowest in the region. So what's going on there?
All right, so they are some of the lowest in the region. There's no doubt about that. I have asked the Parks and Rec Commission to look at raising those rates, so they will be looking at that. They did,
And what's the timing on that?
hopefully for next year. They will raise. They already set the rates for this year, and obviously they've taken applications for the slips already for this year, so they can't increase it in the middle of the season. But with the big dredging project that was just passed, they're taking that into consideration. I've asked them to look at something similar to what Westport had done, where they basically put it on their users to cover it over 10 years. Maybe not the whole thing, but to try to offset that cost. And I would like our marina to do the same. So we've asked Mr. Kennedy to look into that, and the subcommittee, the Marina Subcommittee, has been looking at it. So
Yeah. I might add to that, what we've asked is that they go out and do a market study of not only the fees, because that's one part of it, but the other piece that we hear back from the boaters is what the amenities are if they're paying higher fees.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a boater, so I don't know what those amenities would be, but the idea is to do a more comprehensive study in terms of what are you paying for and what do you get, so it matches up well. And actually,
What's the timing of that? Because it seems like it's got to be time sensitive because people apply for these slips, they get it. So I don't want to miss another season, like for either the amenities or the.
yeah, I think it's got to be done well in advance of January, right?
absolutely, yeah, they're going to work on it. I would assume this summer, and I'll make sure that they do. So I don't want to say I'm not going to assume they will.
So it's not, it's not like we need to check with hundreds of marinas. It's
Right.
not that type of thing. So the universe is pretty straightforward. They should be, I mean, we've been in touch with those marinas and constantly looked at those. We're just looking for a little bit more depth in terms of the analysis, and also something that be presented to the boaters, so they know what they're getting. Because one of the issues over time, I think, has been communication with the boaters to let them know, here's where we are, here's where other people are, so let's agree on the facts. Here's what the amenities they offer, here's what you're not getting and not paying for here, and if you go someplace else, here's what you're getting, but here's also what you're paying for, so.
So, and I also think that this dredging work that's being done is also your opportunity to kind of say, this is, we're looking at the entire program. Right?
Yeah,
Approaching the program.
dredging is something, it's every 4 or 5 years, we're going to be doing dredging, so that's really
Right.
ongoing maintenance. It's kind of like a reval
Yeah,
in
but
the
this
tax
was a big
assessment.
one, wasn't it? Wasn't this the one that hadn't been done for quite some time and there's a lot of expense in this one?
I don't know how far back we go on that.
Thought we
Perhaps
last did
perhaps
Storm
Mr.
Sandy.
Michelangelo
Didn't we
can
did-
enlighten us on that if...
Thought we did some for Storm Sandy, right?
Well, maybe I'm confusing it with what we're doing at Southport. I mean,
Well,
we
you've got Southport Harbor that's been dredged.
Right.
You've got the marina, and we've also had a number of storms. We've taken advantage of some of the FEMA money. We've also dredged the South Pine Creek a little bit or
Right.
Pine Creek a little bit, rather,
Right.
in that. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Michelangelo to give us the dredging update.
Correct. The last
Really, the
dredging-
dredge report.
The last was the dredging that was approved for 700,000. The last this month, actually, earlier this week, it was finalized. Was a channel basically from the all along the fishing pier and even above that. So that hadn't been done since the late 1980s.
That's what I meant.
So the critical point is the 300-foot swath of the pinch point between Fairfield and St. Mary's and Bridgeport, and that's the one that we have to do probably on every 5-year basis, give or take. We did it in spring of 2013, right after Storm Sandy, and that will be done during this project too. So that, in addition to doing the long channel, we'll do the worst part of it too. So that'll, buy us some years, both in the worst part and the long-term one.
Right, and if I might jump in for a bit, one of the things, as you talk to the boaters, and having gone down and had a chance to meet with them down there, one of the things that I think we need to do a better job of town in terms of, here's what you get, and if they've gone 20-something years without having dredging, and turn around and say, the first time we're doing it, we're charging you for that. The question is, what is all the money that has been paid for going for as part of that? So I think the issue is, as part of our planning process, we can look at saying, hey, we're going to budget for every 5 to 10 years that we will do some dredging. Now, it may have to happen more often based on storms that come through,
Right.
but there should be some component that they know they're getting a channel that will fit their boats, or
I would suggest that the marketing campaign isn't going to be, we dredged once in 20 years, so let's charge you.
And I also think that we probably need to keep, that we shouldn't let it get down. If you listen to the presentations at the RTM level and discussion at that, we shouldn't let it get down to the last 2 or 3 feet, at which point it would be inoperable
Exactly.
before we dredge, because you've got permits, it's a long lead time, you've got dollars, and you could have a storm come in the middle and shut out the channel. So we definitely want to, I think, be a little more proactive in our planning on and anticipating when we need to dredge.
Agree with that. Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Michelangelo, is there any type of engineering solutions that would extend that pinch point, that would extend it from I'm not saying there is, I'm just asking more inquisitively.
Yes. So right now when we dredge it, we go for the basically 100-foot wide channel. One of the things that we were working with Bridgeport a couple of years ago was they were looking to reconfigure St. Mary's. So instead of being a triangle, to make it more of a square, and they were looking at it for recreational purposes in Bridgeport to give them more of a beach area. So that was one of those that we had several meetings with them. We hired a consultant for a small-scale study. We applied for grants. We met with the Ash Creek Association. But for some reason, we were very successful with our community development block grants all over town. And if I was a betting man, I would have said that was one of the best ones we had, but unfortunately, we didn't get funding for that one.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that it's going to be a comprehensive study, because I think we all look and hear this number about, we have the lowest fees, but the other side of the equation is never looked at, is what are our amenities, which I don't have a boat down there, so I have no, I'm not in this fight, but I think you got to look at it. I'm glad to see that maybe the dredging will be, amortized over a period of time, and at least maybe we could show a spreadsheet to everybody down there on why it costs what it costs. And
Well, you're absolutely right. I think that while we've looked at other areas as more of a business center, I don't think we've really taken that approach to the marina, and I think we need to do that. And I think the planning part in terms of what the planned maintenance is going forward, I know we've added some services, but I don't think we've had, I know there's been planning, so I don't mean to suggest nothing's going on, but I think that we can do a better job of looking at what services are available. Like now we have Wi-Fi down there that we didn't before. So that's both a safety component as well as a service.
That's great.
And
Just the overall waterfront as a whole, how are we, what are the amenities we offer across the waterfront? What do we charge for the what is the whole
What,
comprehensive plan.
what I'm talking about is kind of marina-focused. I think what you just mentioned might be a broader scope, and that would probably not get done this summer. I don't mean to speak for Anthony in that, but I think let's get the marina done as one step, and then, but I think the whole idea of, I want to say we joked about it a bit during the Penfield, do we have lawn chairs? Do we have umbrellas? Do we rent those out? Is there a whole operation with that? Is that a way to make money? Or what? And I'm not arguing for or against that at the moment, but when you talk about a more comprehensive beachfront plan, I think that may be part of that, and certainly the Parks and Rec Commission can take that on as one of their charges.
Okay.
Just want to, this is exciting. I mean, the idea of kind of developing a plan for the waterfront, similar to what you did with the golf course in terms of a 10-year plan, looking, what are those amenities that are going to differentiate our waterfront? What's going to draw
Exactly.
people from outside of Fairfield, people who don't only have, docking, marina slips, et cetera, but might come in and visit Fairfield.
The beaches and all
The
that
beaches,
kind
et cetera. So that 10-year plan concept, I know that's a bigger
Yeah.
undertaking, but that's very exciting,
Well, and
especially
it's
from a
also-
revenue standpoint.
And it's also very similar to what they've very successfully done with the golf courses.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very similar.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments on the waterfront? Let's flip over to the expense side of the waterfront real quick, which is 294.
Dredging the marina like we dredged the bunkers of the trip.
Right, exactly. It's an asset, valuable asset. All right, are there any questions? I did have questions here. What's the, only because we've spent so much, what's going on with the 30,000 to the 15,000 in the adjustment of the maintenance and repairs of building and ground?
Well, again, working with the first selectman, we were trying to, with the state cuts coming, we wanted to try to be a little proactive and anticipate those. So these are the areas we cut. We cut seasonal payroll, and I spoke with our marina manager about, cutting the maintenance and repair section there from 30 to 15.
So what, I guess more specifically, my question is, so by doing that, what doesn't get done? What does that cut mean to operations? That's what I'm asking.
My understanding, I could have Andy come up here and he could answer it probably better than I can, but it is work on the actual docks themselves, and I'll let Andy take over from there.
Hi, so that's correct. That would be,
Excuse me, Andy? Just because this is your first time up, could you just
Yes, sir.
introduce people and let them know what your title is?
Andrew Kenny. I am the Marina Coordinator. I am in the same office as Joe at Public Works in Sullivan Hall, but I also interact with Anthony and the Park and Rec Commission quite a bit.
Okay, great.
Welcome.
So to answer your question, what would not occur would be improvements to other facilities, such as the sail house at the beach. That's essentially a large two-story cinder block structure. The police park a vehicle there, Public Works parks a vehicle there, and it's underutilized. It can be converted into lockers. There's a lot of discussion about using that building more intelligently, but then the money also would go to dock maintenance. The water lines need to be repaired.
Do you have any concern with this money being cut, that it's going to put you in a...
We can continue to offer, I think, a fantastic facility, and it would just push those improvements out a little bit into the distance. And we're working on other ways to improve revenue, winter storage numbers. We've improved the renewal and waitlist invitation process to speed it up, to get the slips filled before we are forced to prorate slips mid-season. So there's ways to
Got it.
get that to work better.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thank you. The reduction from 30 to 15 in buildings and grounds, I think the other night at the RTM meeting, we had a resident from the public made a negative comment about the docks. Will that reduction significantly affect any work you're doing to maintain the docks?
No, the docks are aging well. They are approaching the end of their lifespan, but I don't think there are any insurmountable maintenance issues that we'll encounter. It's-
Okay, and the reduction, seasonal payroll, where do we carry marina guards? Is that on your budget or in police?
Police.
Okay, so seasonal payroll, does that go hand in hand with the maintenance reduction?
It's lifeguards. So what I did there was we didn't give them the increase of 50 cents. We bumped up the bottom of the scale, but kept everybody else status quo where they were last year. So obviously that will maybe not attract any new talent to us. Potentially, it may not keep the talent we have, but I thought that was our best course of action. So that was where we were saving that money. That saved us about $20,000.
How you doing now? It sounds like, isn't this the time of year where the kids are signing up to become lifeguards for the summer?
Applications are starting to come in. Yeah, we won't start
You
interviews.
noticing a dip?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
I'm going to go to Mr. DeWitt, and then I'll come to Mr. Walsh.
Just one quick question, and I should have brought it up in your administrative budget, but it kind of propagates through all of them. As far as grounds and maintenance, is the majority, who does the majority of that work? Is that a Parks and Rec employee? Is that a contracted services, the mowings and those kind of things?
Mowings and stuff like that are contracted out. So we have a contractor that does that, and that is paid through DPW.
Okay.
So they have an annual contract. It's actually the same contractor that does the Board of Ed field. So we hold every other week we meet with them, so to make sure we're staying on top of all the work that needs to be done.
But other grounds maintenance, like I know we rake the beaches and stuff like that. Is that a
We
contracted
do, and that
service?
comes out of DPW's budget
As well, too,
as
huh?
well.
Okay, but those are contracted services, Mr. Michelangelo?
No, the beachcomber is done by a town employee. And just to, further Anthony's statement, Park and Rec does a wonderful job, but besides their 6 full-time employees, all the physical work on our beaches, on our parks, at our marina, at our town buildings, grounds, are done by Public Works
You're
employees.
doing heavy lifting there.
Yeah, either Public Works employees or contracted out of the operating budget, including the fields at the schools too, except for the high schools.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Walsh.
That study, this is just a suggestion. It might be good, because I heard you say that the docks are starting to get towards the end of the useful life, and I'm sure they can be extended. About maybe figuring out approximately what that would cost, and maybe part of the fee be part of, at least look at that capitalization of that. Not that I think we'd require that whole dock replacement for the entire marina to be covered, but at least to start collecting funds to at least apportion some of those fees to that.
Given the infrastructure needed for the marina, not just the dredging, but the docks, and I think that becomes part of a 5-year plan
Exactly.
for the marina, because you can't wait till they're past their useful life
Yes.
Exactly.
to replace those. And we also, I think that also helps us justify what the fees are.
Exactly.
And I think that gets back into, as a boater, if I'm paying for this, what do I get?
Right.
And I think that becomes part of what do I get part.
Yeah. So I can speak to that.
Sure.
We are, have begun the process to get prices, rough estimates on the various kinds of docks, materials, and the consultant that we're working with on the dredging is going to also help us develop that long-term plan, because we want to spend the money intelligently and do things in steps over the next few years, and not
What worked well for us, I referenced it before when Mrs. Marmion spoke about the, what we did with the golf courses years ago, where we had a presentation on what they had a 10-year plan look like. So, their budget, particularly when it came to capital expenditures, $100,000 a year or so, became kind of a non-event, because it was just, hey, remember that 10-year plan we talked about? This is another thing. So I would really encourage you guys to work on that.
Yep.
And then bring back, at least through our board, it's up to Mr. Tetra for the Board of Selectmen and the leadership of the RTM for that board, but to see actually what that plan is, and do a presentation on the plan, vet the plan, then come back, and each year incrementally action on your plan. That seems to work really well with us.
I agree.
So, we would look forward to that, and hopefully sooner rather than later, at least if it's just the marina aspects of it,
and then the other aspects of it.
You're welcome to do the plan sooner rather than later. Please put the spending off for a few years.
Unless it comes with revenue,
Got it.
and then move it up. So, any other,
Lane is going to cost more money.
right, any other questions, comments, concerns?
And yeah, I mean, just.
Go ahead, Mr. Becker.
Just for that, outside of budget, you can come, I mean, you know, we can put you in different slots where we can spend more time, dig deeper into it.
Oh,
you know what I
please,
mean?
outside of
Have a
budget.
much- Yeah, no. Yeah, just, I mean, that's been helpful when departments have done that.
Well, I think,
Because then
we
we can
think
really
we
dive
talked about
into it.
coming back before the end of the year on some of this stuff, so very definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions as it relates to waterfront or the marina? Seeing none, let's go on to the golf courses, the Dickman Golf Course and the Richardson Golf Course. Thank you, gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Mr. Grace, welcome as well. Seems like we just had you up here.
I've been waiting for this all year.
It was just.
I love being up here.
2 weeks ago.
All right, so, just to be clear on the golf courses, the P and L calls for about $2.2 million worth of revenue. Expenses in about the $1.7 million range. Net income, $600,000. Bonding in the always helpful unemployment compensation, which ticks me off, $55,000. So total net income for what I'd refer to as a business unit is about $541,000 per year for 2018, for next year. So talk to us about what's going on in your budget, what's going on with revenue, what's going on with fees.
Yep. Okay, so the Golf Commission this year decided that they were going to raise the fee to bring in more revenue, as we were asked to do. So they decided to go from a $50 fee, ID fee, to a $70 ID fee for all seniors and adults. They kept the junior rate right where it was at $30 to try to encourage younger golfers to come out and play, which I think is a smart move. The other thing they did was they increased the range fees. So to go up and get a bucket of balls, it went from $6 to $8. So an extra $2 per bucket. But they increased the number of balls you get to try to offset the cost as well. But that brings in some extra revenue. I think we're going to see an uptick in season passes this year because the ID went up. I think people realize that the season passes might be a better deal for them. Typically, it takes about 16 rounds of golf to make the season pass pay off. 16 rounds of golf for some people is a lot. You know, if you're retired, you do that easily. Those are where the rates are coming in, where all our revenue's coming in. Cart rentals, all that is pretty status quo. Lockers will be about the same. Greens fees did not go up. So the fact that the IDs went up, they decided to keep green fees right where they were, just so they weren't hitting people twice. So we see the money up, the revenue up front with the ID as opposed to waiting for it to come in with the rounds.
Mr. Bateson,
I'm sorry, are we covering both golf courses right now?
we're talking about both, but we can go one.
No, that's fine, I did, good.
Is there any questions on revenue for either of the golf courses at this point in time? Go ahead, Mr. Timiak.
What's the total number of rounds you're anticipating playing? Do you have that broken down?
About 40, mid-40s. 40,000 to 44,000 is right where we average.
Yeah.
In a good season. Again, that's all weather dependent.
Right now, do you plan on opening earlier than
We're opening up
anticipated?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday the 9th.
We are?
We are.
Now I know.
Good information. And Mr. Walsh?
Why is the cart rentals going up by 50,000 from fiscal year 17 estimated to 18? Is fees going up for that, or is it?
I think the contract is up, so we have to go out and renegotiate a contract.
Oh, is that expense? It's not, is that income?
No, this is revenue.
Oh, you're talking revenue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
Peter only does the expense side of the budget.
He's good at
I
spending
spend
the money.
money, I
Trust
don't
me.
collect.
No, we are just anticipating more
More
rentals. Yeah, more rounds.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, the actuals in 16 were close to 350. Where did you come in for 17? You don't know, I mean, obviously you don't have everything in. 'cause
We don't
you've
have
got
it
a few
all in
months
yet.
left to go.
Right.
But where are you pacing right now? Do we know that?
Well, I see what's going on. It actually became more clear, because in 17, you were basing it on some of your actuals from 15.
Yep.
And then now you're basing it more on your actuals from 16. Because, you know, we had one of the best public courses in Connecticut by a magazine, right?
You
Organization.
look at it, it's remarkably
CSGA.
consistent at
Yeah.
300 until last year, when it did go to
All right.
350.
And in anticipation of further global warming, we've got a longer golf season.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah, we were open to January
We could
3rd
cut the
last
snow
year.
removal budget then.
Hey, there it is.
We were open to January 3rd last year, and then we closed down, and we opened up in March. So we did paid rounds, I think, I think it was the last year, which ran from, the fiscal year was 46,000, plus there was like 2,000 complimentary rounds.
And
But,
that's a huge number compared to golf courses around, because it's a 7-day-a-week number.
Sure.
Most courses are shut down on at least 1 day a week. So that's got to be one of the largest number of rounds of anybody around.
It's the largest since I've been here, 16, 17 years.
Did you mention that we're getting a new lease or rental on the golf carts?
We're in the last year of the cart
Okay.
lease right now, so
All right.
that will be going back out to bid, and hopefully we could update those carts to more modernized carts, GPS, all that good stuff.
Now, is the par 3 golf course keeping pace as well? Is that falling behind, or how's that doing?
No, for the most part, it's keeping pace, right with what it's always done. I mean, it's not a
Break even, right?
Exactly. Try not to lose money, but it is it's a popular course. Seniors and juniors play there mainly. So
Is that opening as well later this week?
Yep.
Is that earlier this year as compared to last year?
It's probably around the same time.
And you said you only closed January 3rd this year?
We closed, no, excuse me.
no, last year.
Of last year.
Yeah, this year we closed in December.
We were closed in early December this year.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, cart rentals year-to-date is 203,000.
so it's 203,000, so what does that
So to
put
reach
us
the
on?
300,000, we need 100,000 between now and June 30.
That was quick math, wow. Thanks.
97.
Okay, and you're opening, so that's
Prime
roughly
season.
3 months?
Sounds like a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Good months.
And I think
Rain, be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at, obviously it's weather dependent, no surprise, but it's really weekend weather
Absolutely.
dependent.
Yeah.
And a rainy weekend is much worse than a rainy Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions on the golf course? Anything on specific expense items related to the golf course? I did notice that there was a capital request that was cut out. You're going to be okay with that? First of all, that's a heck of a lawnmower for $60,000.
It's not a lawnmower, it's a rough mower, but it takes, I have one I bought in 2006, and it's a little beat up, but we can survive another year with it.
You can. Okay. Any other questions related to the budgets for either Smith Richardson or the par 3 of the Dickman Golf Course
I'm not even there yet, hold
on the expense side?
Slow down a little.
Huh? Slow down a
on.
little?
Let's just-
Trying to find the
we
page.
can't even find the page.
Oh, I'm so very sorry.
But can I,
Actually, I'll let you know in July if that mower will last.
yeah.
What'd you say?
I said I'll let you know in July if that mower will last.
So for the Dickman Golf Course, the pages of the expense page is 296. For the Smith Richardson, the page is 300. So please take your time, and with either of those budgets, ask any question that we want.
Well,
Go ahead, Mr. Becker.
just so in regards to the mower, because we've been down this road before about cutting them and stuff. You noted that it breaks down frequently and it's costly to repair. Do we have any idea in the last 12 months how much we've spent, or last season, how much we spent on repairing it? And
$7,500.
$7,500.
That was last year.
Last year.
And then we do preventative maintenance is probably $2,000 a year.
So
So it's 2,000, just to change the oil and all the bearings and the blades and sharpen it and everything.
But
That's
you'd have to
probably
do one-
2,000, excuse me?
but you have to do that on a new unit too, right? 2,000.
Oh, yeah, we get the new unit and then
Yeah.
do preventive maintenance,
And then an additional 5,500 in the breakdowns?
7,500.
7,500 on
Yeah,
the breakdowns.
between tires and hoses blowing and bent shafts and et cetera.
And when that's broken, how many, I mean, like, you're losing a couple days, I mean, what do you, and then do you have other equipment then that you're utilizing?
Oh, we have
or-
smaller equipment that, it takes more manpower to make up for that loss.
And that manpower, is it costing you more, like hourly employees?
Oh, yeah,
or
definitely.
overtime,
Yes.
Things like that?
Definitely.
So do we have any idea how much more that then cost you last year in additional man hours?
I can get that for you, I don't have it off the top of my
Could you try to
head.
piece that together? Because I guess what I'm looking at here is 7,500, the man hours, may start to look like a, not a great decision.
I get all that for you, yes, sure.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
it a
please
follow-up,
do.
Mr. Bateson? Yeah, let me go to Mr. DeWitt. Mr. Becker, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you
No,
outside?
that's it. Yeah, he'll give me the follow-up. through
Mr.
finance.
DeWitt, and
Thank
then
you.
I'll go over to Mr. Bateson. Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Yeah, it's manifesting itself here, but I should have asked the purchasing director. Vehicle fuel and lube is going up. This is the first budget where we get into real gas and oil, right? And I'm wondering, maybe for our purchasing director, if we could pass it on to him. Have we negotiated the rate? We always talk about, is DPW using the same rate for gas that Public
Everybody,
Works is using?
Chris, everybody in town
Yep.
uses the same rate.
Okay.
They're given that rate by finance and Linda Gardner in this case. So
Okay.
the only, year to year, there's some rate, but there's also some volume differences potentially. So the question is, are you using more gas and oil, or is it just the change in rate? But
Right.
Linda can
So
let you know what the percentage difference in the rate is to help with
Okay.
that.
I can't imagine gas went up a whole lot in the last year. So your number's up $4,000. So I'm wondering, are you using more gas? I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, I would say yeah, because we were open longer, and, maybe
Well-
this year it's gonna be down. I mean, I keep track of it, it's a total gallons and what we average every year.
And this is based on, we base this on a 6-year average.
Okay.
So that would probably increase.
So it's not based on, I'm open 10 months or 9 months based on weather, it's a 6-year average, right?
And they don't know
It's
how
it's just.
No, and that's right, well, that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So, Ms. Gardner, what was the increase in oil lube this year? Or was there an increase, I should say?
Can you say it out loud?
Not to be picky, but.
It's not a secret.
No,
Well,
last year we, 17, it was octane, 193, and we're budgeting 214.
And what's that based on?
Sorry, the $1.91 went to
Three
$2.14.
$2.14.
So you went up 20 cents, rough numbers, 19 cents.
That's what I was trying to find in the paperwork. We basically buy in advance.
Right.
And I'm not sure what percentage of which types, fuel oil, gasoline, we have through the whole fiscal year, because sometimes our contracts end in December or March, and
Can you
I don't have that
Can you
here.
get a quick blurb from the purchasing director? It goes back to
Yeah.
Mr. DeWitt's original point. We know the way it works, that it's done through the whole town, and it should be pervasive to the town. But can we get a quick little memo on what they're seeing, when they bought it, what they've locked in, what's not locked in, and why they're expecting it to go up? Just something very brief. It doesn't need to be, War and Peace.
The average of the last 3 years.
Right.
I think our diesel fuel is booked in through January 15, 18, per gallon at 201, and then from January through June is 211 per gallon, so those are already contracted. Heating oil,
Well, let's just get the
I'll
memo.
just put this right.
Yeah.
I
Put
usually
it-
have the purchasing director.
Yeah, let's just,
Yeah, I mean, these are numbers, I'll just,
Didn't see Twitty.
be easier to read them than listen to me.
what else? Any other questions, comments? Mr. Walsh?
If we get the new mower, does that other mower go down to part 3 then, or is it just so bad now you just get rid of it?
I would not get rid of it. I would,
Backup,
As
or-
a backup.
Okay, you'd stay up there, up at Smith?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it'll last,
Okay.
like I said, it'll last the summer,
Yeah,
hopefully,
Yeah.
and, it'll always be nice to have for backup.
yeah.
Is it kind of like the police and fire department where you get the new mower and then the other guy gets the,
So, something like that. We go back and forth.
the old Crown
Right,
Vic.
right.
Or the tax assessor.
What other questions do we have for these gentlemen on the golf courses? Anything at this point? Seeing none, I think we're done. Thank you, gentlemen. We
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
And good luck with your opening of the season.
Thank you.
Before we get done, we're 2 nights in. Any questions, comments, concerns as we go through this to any of my colleagues on either the Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen? Any commentary so far? Anything we would like to change up? Any concerns? Mr. DeWitt?
No, but in our joking just a minute ago, Mr. Becker and I made us think for a second. When the assessor said, "Hey, we got rid of our fuel-efficient vehicle, now I'm driving a Crown Vic," and his oil and gas went up. Are we not replacing our fuel-efficient hybrid vehicles, or? So I'm kind of curious what that trend is.
Yeah, I think that would be a good question to ask of
Mr. Michelangelo?
Mr. Michelangelo when he's back.
I'm in.
And we did discuss this at one
Yeah,
point.
I thought quite a few of those vehicles we received as grants, one-time grants.
Right, and they went away.
Yeah.
If the grants are not
And-
there.
Oh,
it's
you mean
not-
the grant expired kind of
Yeah.
thing, or?
Well,
Well, the car expired.
Car expired and we didn't get a new one? Okay.
Mr. Bateson's point's correct from a standpoint that there are fewer grants out there,
Right.
so that is a challenge.
I
Well,
noticed a
and
couple
it
of
also-
electric cars, though.
It also goes
We
to
have
the
charging
point-
stations, but no cars to charge them?
Yeah, actually,
No, I thought
we've got some
Did I
electric
say
cars.
that?
We're going to take a look at that,
Yeah.
but there's also some concern among department heads about where you're charging those up and when you get it, where you go, and,
Right. Well, and the other thing
So-
the other thing is, we all have to look at is, what is our existing fleet of cars, and do we need all the cars that we have? Should we be providing cars, to people all the time, or is it just part of the job? And I'm not
That's-
making a comment on that,
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm not making a conclusion on that. I'm just saying we gotta look at that.
That is one of the areas we've been taking a look at, including, what are we doing with what I'll call pool cars, which is
Right.
basically you sign up for those when you need them, as opposed to a car that's dedicated to your department or a couple.
Exactly.
So it depends a little bit on the work environment, what people are doing, how often they use it. Building officials might use those every day,
Right.
not all day, every day, but every day when they go out and do inspections versus other folks. So that's been part of our ongoing evaluation of what and what kind of cars. And we're also, excuse me, also taking a look at, does it always make sense to do hand-me-downs?
Right.
What's the operational cost of doing that versus potentially, can we get some less expensive cars for running around within town? Because much of our department travel is within town.
Right, should be.
Maybe you just use some of those bicycles in town hall.
Exactly. Any other questions, comments,
Oh,
concerns for
geez.
anybody
Checking property.
before we adjourn for the evening? Seeing none, we're back at it Tuesday night, and Tuesday night is the Board of Education night, so that'll be an interesting discussion. I thank you all, and I'm glad that we're done much earlier than last night. Do I have a motion? I'll take Mr. Walsh. Do I have a second? Take Mr. DeWitt. All in favor of adjournment? Opposed, abstentions? Good night, everybody.
Linda, thank you for my news report.